Hello everyone, I'm the storyteller, and today I'll take you on a spooky story. But don't worry, it will be a gentle and relaxing journey before you drift off to sleep. If you're looking for a tale that's just mysterious enough and gentle enough to relax to, then you've come to the right place. Now, find yourself a comfortable space, close your eyes, and let the story begin. Story 1. The Death Bringer in the Photo. I never believed in ghosts. That's how these stories always begin, right? The skeptic, the doubter, the rational mind trying to make sense of something that can't be explained. But I'm not trying to convince you of anything. I'm not here to change your mind. I'm only telling you what happened to me, because I don't think I'll survive long enough to tell anyone in person. It started with a photograph. It was late September when I moved into the duplex on the edge of Fairhaven, Connecticut. I had just finalized my divorce. My ex-wife Rachel kept the house, the dog, and the sense of normalcy I once called life. I didn't have much left besides my Nikon, a few boxes of clothes, and a strange pull towards solitude. The place I rented was cheap, old, and surrounded by towering pine trees that kept the backyard in perpetual shade. The landlord, a man with sun-leathered skin and a glass eye, gave me the keys without so much as a walkthrough. "You'll hear some creaks," he said. "Old place. Don't let the shadows get to you." I thought he was joking. I'm a freelance photographer, mostly boring work like real estate listings, event shoots, and the occasional engagement session when I can stand happy couples long enough to take their portraits. But the light in Fairhaven had something different, something still, almost too still. The first photo that changed everything was taken on a Sunday morning. The town was dead quiet. I walked into the woods behind my unit to catch some golden hour shots. Mist weaving between the trunks. Squirrels darting along the fallen logs. I snapped a series of wide shots, nothing remarkable, until I turned toward a clearing where an old wooden swing hung from a decaying branch. Click. I didn't see anything when I looked through the viewfinder, but later that night, when I uploaded the photos to my laptop, I saw her. A woman, pale, almost gray, thin limbs draped in something that looked like tattered lace or funeral veil. She stood beside the swing, facing the camera, though her head was slightly tilted, unnaturally, like someone had twisted it halfway around before stopping. Her eyes were wide open and empty. I zoomed in. The pixels broke apart, but her face stayed disturbingly intact. I scanned the next photo. She was gone. Just trees. I checked the one before it. Also empty. Only that one frame caught her. At first, I told myself it was a double exposure. Maybe an old image I had saved accidentally overlapped, though I knew damn well it wasn't. Still, I tried to sleep that night, chalking it up to digital interference or my imagination. Then the footsteps started. I'd hear them upstairs, slow, deliberate. My unit only had one floor. The attic above wasn't supposed to be accessible, but something moved up there. Always around 3 a.m. Always stopping the moment I stood beneath the ceiling with a flashlight and racing heart. By the end of the week, I had 4 more photos, each from different shoots, different locations. A rusted playground behind an abandoned church. A cemetery on the outskirts of town. A lake with fog so dense it muffled the world. In every image, the same woman appeared. Sometimes closer, always facing me. Her head never looked the same. In one, it was leaned to the right, shoulder almost touching her ear. In another, it hung back, mouth stretched open as if screaming into the sky. I tried showing them to someone, my friend Marcus, who managed a photo studio in New Haven. When I pulled up the folder on my laptop at the cafe where we met, the images were gone. Corrupted files, black squares, each one stamped with a single word. Watched. Marcus thought I was messing with him. Maybe take a break, man. You've been through a lot. I wanted to believe him. But that night, when I returned home, I found the front door ajar. My camera, always kept on the desk, was missing. In its place was a Polaroid. Not mine. Not any brand I recognized. I picked it up. It was still warm. The photo was of me, sleeping, in my bed. I live alone. The next day I boarded up the attic entrance and changed the locks. I stopped going out to shoot. I closed the blinds. Every shadow seemed longer than it should be. My reflection in the bathroom mirror sometimes lingered half a second longer than my movements. Then the woman came back, but this time, not in photos. I saw her reflection in a window at the grocery store, just behind me, standing still in the frozen food aisle. When I turned around, nothing. But I felt it, cold breath against my neck, the whisper of fabric dragging across linoleum. I abandoned my cart and ran like a lunatic to the car. The next morning, I found muddy footprints across the living room carpet. Small, barefoot, leading from the front door to my bedroom. That's when I noticed the smell. Wet soil, rot, the coppery tang of blood beneath floorboards. I called the landlord. He didn't answer. I drove to his address listed on the lease, an hour away. The woman who answered the door looked confused. Mr. Keenan? He's been dead for 5 years. Car crash. Why are you asking? I held up the lease. Her face went pale. That's his signature. But this isn't his handwriting. I didn't go back home that night. Instead, I checked into a motel on Route 32. Slept with the lights on. Checked every corner, every drawer, even the ceiling tiles. But no matter where I looked, I couldn't find peace. She was in my dreams now. Closer. Her face was wronged. Skin like wax. Teeth like splinters. Her eyes, if you could call them that, seemed made of static. She never spoke, but I could feel the message like it was being burned into my bones. You saw me. You brought me back. I woke up with my chest covered in bruises. 5 fingers, pressed deep into my skin. Like something had knelt on my chest while I slept. I left town the next morning. Packed only what I could fit into a duffel. I've been driving for hours, state lines behind me, but my phone keeps vibrating in the passenger seat. Unknown number. Same message each time. Image received. Each time, a new photo downloads. She's in all of them. And she's getting closer. I don't know how this ends. But if you're reading this, and you ever see a woman in your photos that shouldn't be there, don't look again. Whatever you do, don't take another picture. I told myself I wouldn't go back. After I left Fairhaven, I drove south without direction. Just kept the wheel steady and the music loud enough to drown out my own thoughts. I barely slept. Every motel room started to feel the same. Stale air, scratchy bed sheets, and that creeping sense that I wasn't alone. Even when I bolted the door and pushed a chair under the handle, it didn't matter how far I went. She kept finding me. The woman in the photographs. Each night, another image showed up on my phone. No notifications, just there, in the gallery. I tried factory resets. I bought a new phone, switched to a burner. Same result. The photos came back. Only now, they weren't just of me sleeping or driving. They were of places I hadn't been to yet. A rundown diner with a crooked neon sign, a boarded-up house with ivy-choked walls, a red swing set in a rotting backyard. By the time I reached a town in northern Virginia, I realized something terrifying. The photos were leading me somewhere. I had seen the house before. Not in real life, but in the latest image that appeared on my phone that morning. It was tucked between two vacant lots, partially hidden behind a rusted chain link fence. The windows were blacked out. The door was slightly ajar. I should have turned around. I should have kept driving. But I didn't. Something inside me, some sick part of my brain, or maybe just desperation, made me walk toward that house. I parked 3 blocks away, clutching the camera I had sworn I would never use again. My fingers shook as I crossed the threshold. The air inside the house was thick, not just with dust or decay, but something heavier, a pressure in my chest, a feeling that the walls were watching. The wood groaned beneath each step like it resented me being there. Everything was layered in grime, forgotten newspapers from the early 2000s, crumpled photos scattered across the floor like leaves. That's when I saw the first one, a photo, crumpled, face down. I picked it up and nearly dropped it. It was of me, not recent, not taken by me. I was younger, maybe 10 years old at a birthday party I barely remembered. But the woman, she was there, behind me, out of focus, half in shadow. My stomach dropped. There was another, and another. Every photo I found in that house had her in it. Always behind me. Always just far enough away that you wouldn't notice her unless you really looked. But she had always been there, watching. I stumbled into a back room where the walls were covered with photographs, tacked up in haphazard rows, thousands of them, all printed from different cameras. Some old Polaroids, some faded film, some in sharp digital clarity. Every single one featured her. In some, she was standing behind families posing at barbecues. In others, she peeked through windows, blurred behind curtains, or pressed against glass. In one photo, she was kneeling beside a sleeping infant, her head tilted sideways, her long fingers stretched toward the crib bars. And in the center of the wall was a photo of me, current, taken just days ago, wearing the same clothes I had on when I arrived at the house. I don't remember taking it. I certainly hadn't sent it anywhere. I turned around sharply, camera raised, ready to run. But the room behind me was empty. That's when the door slammed shut. The lights flickered, though I was sure they hadn't been on to begin with. Something moved in the corner. Not a shape, not quite. More like the idea of movement. Like the air itself was slithering, whispering, my name. I swear I heard my name. I backed up, heart racing, sweat cold down my spine. Then something scratched at the floorboards behind me. A dragging sound, wet and deliberate. My breath hitched. I raised the camera. Click. The flash lit the room for just a second. And she was there, standing inches from me. I didn't see her with my eyes. But in the instant after the flash, the image appeared on the small digital screen. She was smiling. Her mouth stretched too wide, full of teeth that didn't seem human. Her arms hung wrong, too long, too limp, like broken limbs loosely reattached. Her dress was soaked, clinging to her body like she crawled out of a swamp. I ran. I didn't look back. I shoved through the door, tore through the overgrown yard, jumped into the car, and drove until the gas tank blinked empty. I didn't stop shaking for hours. I'm writing this now from a truck stop in Maryland. I locked myself in the restroom for privacy, my laptop balanced on my knees. I haven't looked at the camera since. It's still in my bag, zipped up tight, but I swear I can hear it clicking on its own. Taking pictures in the dark. I don't know what she is. A ghost, a demon, some forgotten spirit that latched onto me through the lens, but she isn't bound to one place. She's growing stronger, bolder, and now the images. They're changing. Tonight, the new photo wasn't of me. It wasn't even taken in a place I recognized. It was a photo of someone else, a little girl, sleeping in a room with pink wallpaper, and there she was again, this time in the closet, peering out between the slats, watching, waiting. I think she's looking for new people now, not just me. This isn't about me anymore. She's spreading, through the photographs, through every lens that dares to see what shouldn't be seen. If you're reading this, check your photos. Look closely, especially the ones you didn't remember taking. And if you see her, delete them, burn them, do whatever you can. Just don't let her get closer, because once she steps out of the image, you'll never be alone again. I didn't sleep again after that night in Maryland. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not a face, really. More like a cracked porcelain mask stretched over something else. Something darker. Her smile was always too wide, like her skin wasn't meant to bend that far. And her eyes. God, her eyes. They looked dead but aware. Watching from inside some place I didn't understand. A place I was beginning to feel every time I picked up the camera. I stopped taking photos. Completely. I deleted my editing software. I smashed the SIM card out of my phone. I even duct taped the lens cap onto the Nikon and buried it at the bottom of my duffel bag. But none of it mattered because the photos kept coming. I woke up 2 nights ago to find dozens printed copies scattered around my motel bed. I don't own a printer. They were warm, fresh, like someone had laid them on me while I slept. Each one was of a different place, different people, all strangers, all being watched. In one photo, a couple embraced on a boardwalk while she stood behind a nearby railing, her arms dangling like ropes, head slumped sideways, her eyes locked on the lens. In another, a man was sitting alone at a diner booth, mid-bite, while she crouched on the ceiling above him, her mouth gaping open in silent laughter. And then came the worst one. It was a photo of me again. But this time, it was taken from above. I was lying in bed, eyes open in terror, staring directly at the ceiling, at her. I had no memory of that moment. I don't know what's real anymore. Yesterday, I met someone, the first person in weeks who didn't look straight through me. Her name was Lena, early 30s, worn face, tired eyes. She was a clerk at a dusty pawn shop in Richmond, Virginia, where I wandered in, half delirious, looking for a cheap sleeping bag. She noticed the bruises on my neck and arms. I told her I fell. She didn't believe me. "You're running from something," she said. Her voice wasn't accusing, just tired, like she'd heard this story before. I don't know why I told her. Maybe I needed to say it out loud to believe I wasn't losing my mind. I told her everything, from the first photo to the motel prints. She didn't interrupt, just stood there, arms crossed, her eyes growing darker the more I spoke. When I finished, she went behind the counter and pulled out a small, leather-bound book. Old, burned on the edges, smelled like mildew and dead leaves. She flipped to a marked page and laid it in front of me. There, sketched in smudged charcoal, was a figure, thin limbs, hollow eyes, dressed like dripping lace. The caption beneath read, "She who renders through glass." I couldn't breathe. Lena explained in a whisper that this thing, this entity, wasn't just a ghost. It was an echo, a spiritual parasite that attached itself through visual mediums, mirrors, photos, videos, anything reflective or interpretive. She was never alive, Lena said. She's born from memory, from grief, from the moment someone looks into the void and wants to see something more. And something answers. I asked how to stop it. Her lips pressed tight. You don't. Not really. But you can trace the origin. Cut the thread if you're lucky. Find the first image, the one that started it all. I remembered the swing in the woods. That first photo, the woman beside it. I thought that was the beginning, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe I'd already seen her before then. Maybe she was in my life long before I noticed. I called my mother that night. We hadn't spoken in months, not since the divorce. Her voice cracked when she heard mine. I asked her a question I never thought I would. Did anything strange happen to me as a kid? Anything supernatural? She was silent for too long. Then carefully, she said, "There was one thing. When I was 5, we lived in a small farmhouse in Vermont. My dad had just left, and my mom said I used to wander into the fields behind the house and sit alone for hours. She found it odd, but I was always a quiet child. One day, she followed me, said she saw me talking, laughing, to nothing. When she asked who I was with, I said, 'The lady in the water dress.' A week later, I nearly drowned in the pond at the edge of the property. 'I pulled you out just in time,' she whispered. 'Your eyes were open under the water, but you weren't panicking. You were smiling.' I hung up. I didn't sleep that night either. Today, I drove back to Fairhaven, back to the swing in the woods. I don't know why. I told myself it was to destroy the camera, to bury it where this all began. But part of me wanted answers, something final. I reached the woods just before dusk. The air was thicker than I remembered. The trees leaned in like they were trying to listen. The swing still creaked in the windless air. I dug a hole and threw the camera inside. But before I could bury it, I heard something behind me. A click. Not from my camera. From somewhere else. I turned slowly. A figure stood among the trees. Not moving. Barely visible in the fading light. But unmistakable. She wasn't alone anymore. There were more of them. Men, women, children. All pale, all still. All staring out with wide, empty eyes, silent, as if they had stepped straight out of their own forgotten photographs. Victims maybe, witnesses, or parts of her now. I backed away, heart thundering, breath sharp and shallow. Then she moved, not walking, gliding, straight toward me. The last thing I remember was falling backward, the camera rolling out of the hole, the flash going off. For just 1 second I saw through her eyes, saw myself lying on the ground, helpless, terrified, my mouth open in a scream I couldn't hear. And I understood. She wasn't just haunting me. She was becoming me. Every photo she appears in steals something, a moment, a breath, a fragment of the soul, until there's nothing left but the image. Until you become the ghost. I'm in a hospital now. They said I was found on the edge of the woods, unresponsive, no ID, just bruises and blood under my fingernails. I didn't speak for 3 days. They think I'm traumatized, delusional. I let them think that. I tried to warn one of the nurses, told her not to take my picture for the records. She laughed, said it was policy, and now every night when she checks in on me, her eyes look just a little more distant, like something inside her is watching from the other side. It's spreading again, through her, through the photo she took. It's never going to stop, unless someone finds that first image. If you're reading this, and you've seen her, don't try to fight her. Just look away, or she'll be the last thing you ever see. Story 2. Someone is here with me. I've never liked living alone. Some people find peace in solitude, in the freedom to make noise at midnight, or to let dishes sit in the sink without judgment. But me, I've always needed noise. The sound of someone breathing on the other side of a wall. The muffled chatter of a TV in another room. The little things that let you know you're not alone in the world. When I took the lease for that studio apartment in Portland, Oregon, it wasn't because I wanted to. It was because I had no choice. My breakup with Josh had been messy, loud, and final. He got the friends, the dog, and the townhouse we'd shared for 3 years. I got the first place I could afford on my salary as a freelance editor, which meant the attic studio of a once grand Victorian now split into 4 rentals. It was fine. Creaky floorboards, a ceiling fan that groaned every time it spun. Stains on the corners of the ceiling from a roof that had probably leaked through 5 landlords. But it was mine. The first time I noticed something was off, it was small. My coffee mug, one I always kept on the left side of the sink, had been moved to the right. I told myself I must have done it without realizing. I was tired, distracted. But then it happened again. And again. Sometimes the shower curtain would be drawn when I swore I left it open. Other times, drawers I rarely used were slightly ajar. It was easy to dismiss at first, easy to blame it on myself. I was adjusting, living alone for the first time in years, in a drafty old house full of sounds. I thought maybe the place just shifted, but things escalated. I woke up one morning to find a spoon on the kitchen counter, still wet with milk. There was cereal residue at the bottom of the bowl in the sink, and I hadn't eaten cereal since high school. Still, I said nothing, told no one. What was I supposed to say? Hi, I think someone might be entering my apartment at night and eating breakfast? No. I tried to shake it off. Started locking the inside door to my apartment with a deadbolt, even though the front entry to the building already had a secure passcode lock. I changed the code on that lock too, just in case. Then the real fire began. One night, I came home from a late shift, editing a travel documentary. I'd been at a co-working space until nearly 1 a.m. My feet hurt, my eyes ached, and all I wanted was to collapse into bed. But as I stepped into my apartment, I immediately noticed the air. It was different, warmer, thicker, like someone had just been there. I turned on every light, one by one, walked slowly, quietly. I checked under the bed, in the closet, even behind the shower curtain. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No open windows. No broken locks. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling. I didn't sleep well that night. Every sound made me jump. I kept thinking I heard breathing, right behind me. The worst part? The next morning, I found a single strand of dark brown hair on my pillow. My hair is blonde. That's when I started keeping a knife in my nightstand. I also bought one of those cheap motion-activated security cameras off Amazon. Set it up facing my kitchen, angled just enough to catch the main living space. I didn't expect to find anything. Honestly, I hoped I wouldn't. I just wanted peace of mind. But when I checked the footage the next day, my stomach dropped. At 3:42 a.m., a man appeared in the frame, not kicked in the door, not broken a window. He just stepped into view, barefoot, quiet, like he'd been there the whole time. Tall, maybe 6'2", slender, dressed in black. His face was partially obscured, but I could see a glint of something metallic, maybe glasses. He didn't do anything violent. He just stood there, watching my bed. He lingered for 7 minutes, then stepped backward out of view. I nearly vomited. I ran straight to the police station with my laptop, filed a report. The officers I spoke to, a tired middle-aged woman with sunken eyes, was polite, but not exactly helpful. No signs of forced entry? Could be someone with a key? Old tenants maybe? Ex-boyfriend? They said they'd look into it, but I didn't hold my breath. I changed the locks, bought a doorstop alarm, but he came back. The camera caught him again 2 nights later. This time he walked straight to my fridge, opened it, drank directly from the orange juice carton. Then he looked at the camera, right into it, like he knew. Then he waved. I don't know what broke inside me, but I stopped eating, barely slept. My boss noticed something was off and suggested I take time off. I lied and said I was fine, but the truth, I wasn't fine. I was unraveling. Then came the dreams, or at least I thought they were dreams. Dreams where I couldn't move, where my limbs were heavy, my eyes fluttered but wouldn't open. Dreams where I felt someone lifting my arm, brushing hair from my forehead, sometimes whispering. I thought they were stress hallucinations, until I checked my camera footage again. The intruder wasn't just standing anymore. He was sitting on my bed. He wasn't doing anything overtly violent, just sitting, staring. Once, I saw him lift my arm and let it fall gently. Another night, he pulled the blanket up to my chin, like tucking me in. Then, one night, the footage stopped. Corrupted file. Camera malfunction. The next morning, I woke up with a dull headache and a bitter taste in my mouth. And when I went to make coffee, I noticed something strange. The little bottle of sleeping pills I kept in the medicine cabinet, untouched for months, was half empty. That's when it hit me. He was drugging me. He wasn't just watching anymore. He was waiting until I was unconscious, then coming out of whatever hellhole he crawled into. I checked everywhere, every crevice, pulled open drawers, flipped the mattress, checked the attic crawl space, and then I found it. The empty wardrobe by the far wall. One I never used. It was deeper than I remembered, too deep, and it had scratch marks on the inside. Long, desperate lines along the wood, like someone had been clawing it from the inside. I stood there, frozen, my breath stuck in my throat. Behind me, I heard a soft creak, the floorboards, and I knew he was still here, somewhere inside the walls of my home, watching, waiting, and now he knew I knew. I started avoiding the turnoff to Craden Hill. It's the only shortcut between my apartment and the print shop where I work the graveyard shift. But after what happened 2 nights ago, I'd rather add 15 minutes to my commute than feel that silence pressing down on me again. It's hard to explain. Really, people always say, a road is just a road. But Craden Hill doesn't feel that way. Not at night. Not when your headlights are the only thing cutting through a tunnel of trees, and the pavement beneath you swallows every sound like it's made of velvet. There's something unnatural about how quiet it gets. Not eerie, just off. The problem is, I didn't always think that way. It wasn't until that night, Tuesday, that everything changed. And now, every detail's etched into my memory like a scar that won't fade. That night, I was late leaving the shop. Some idiot printed 100 pages of an invoice packet upside down, and I had to reformat everything. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I finally slid into my car. I remember checking the mirror and noticing how hollow my own eyes looked in the reflection. I hadn't been sleeping right for weeks, but something about that night made my skin itch. I took Creighton anyway, just to get home faster. The first half of the road was normal. The usual overgrown branches clawing at the passenger side window. The old wooden sign that once read "Scenic Route Ahead," but now just sagged at a 45-degree angle. One corner splintered and black with rot. I passed it and turned the music down, thinking maybe a little quiet would calm the pounding behind my eyes. That's when I saw him again. Same guy, same place. A man walking along the shoulder of the road, no flashlight, no reflective gear. Just a black jacket zipped up to his chin and a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He didn't even flinch when I passed him. Didn't look up or react to the rush of air as my car sped by. I barely had time to register it before the road curved again. I muttered something under my breath, probably idiot or maniac, and kept driving. But when I glanced in the rearview mirror, he was gone. No one was there. Not walking, not running. Just empty road stretching into the dark. I told myself he'd stepped off into the trees. Maybe he didn't like headlights. Maybe he was on something. I laughed nervously, like I was convincing myself it was funny. Then I saw the tire marks. Not mine. Someone else's. Fresh rubber streaks veering off the road and into the trees. The grooves were deep, frantic, like the car hadn't just slid. It had tried to turn hard. I slowed down and peered into the woods, but my headlights only reached a few feet in. Everything past that was just shapes and shadows. And then my engine cut out. No warning, no sputter, just dead. The lights went black, the dashboard went silent. Even the air conditioning stopped. Just a puff of warm air left in its wake. I sat there in the middle of the road, gripping the steering wheel with both hands, listening to nothing. Not crickets, not wind, nothing. I fumbled for my phone. No service. Of course. I opened the door, hesitated. The trees looked like they were leaning closer now. I know that sounds stupid, but the more I stared, the more they seemed curious, like they were watching me watch them. I popped the hood, got out. The air felt thicker than it should have. Humid, but not warm. And even though there was no wind, the trees were swaying slightly, just enough to put the thought in my head that something was moving between them. I stood in front of the car, lifted the hood, and stared blankly at the engine. I don't know anything about cars. I could recognize the battery and the windshield wiper fluid container, but that was about it. Everything else was just wires and metal. That's when I heard the crack. A single footstep somewhere behind me. Not leaves crunching, not twigs snapping. A boot, on pavement. I turned around, but there was nothing. Just the road, empty in both directions. I waited, held my breath, convinced myself it was an echo, or maybe a branch falling. Then I saw something move at the tree line. Something low, small. The shape of a crouching man? No, it couldn't have been. Too fast, too fluid. I slammed the hood shut and backed toward the driver's side. My hand shook as I reached for the door handle, and that's when I saw the smear. Across the window, a fingerprint. Long, oily, dragged down the glass like someone had been watching from outside and slid their finger across it, lovingly. I locked the doors, tried to start the car again. Nothing. I didn't want to stay in the car, but I didn't want to leave it either. It felt like a trap. No matter what I did, something bad was waiting for me on the other side. Then the lights came back on. Just like that. The dashboard lit up. The engine rumbled to life. Headlights flared back on, illuminating the road ahead. I didn't question it. I didn't want to. I drove fast, didn't look back, didn't blink. I got home around 2:45 a.m. and sat in the driveway for 10 full minutes before I worked up the nerve to get out. I didn't tell anyone the next day. Not my manager, not my friend Jay. I didn't want to sound crazy. But last night, someone knocked on my door at 3:42 a.m. 3 slow knocks, then silence. I watched through the peephole for 10 minutes. No one was there. But when I checked the doorknob in the morning, I found something wedged beneath it. A piece of paper. Torn. Stained with something brown. There were only 5 words written in blocky, childlike handwriting. Don't take this road again. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. I haven't thrown the note away. I don't know why. Maybe part of me still needs proof that it all really happened. It's sitting in the bottom drawer of my desk, between an expired passport and a roll of packing tape. I only looked at it once after that night, but I remember every letter burned into that scrap of paper. Don't take this road again. The letters weren't just written. They were pressed, gouged into the page, like the writer was digging the words out of it. And the brown stain still smells faintly like rust. I'd like to say I never took Creighton Hill again, that I listened, that I was smart. But 2 nights after the knock, I did go back. Not because I wanted to, because something started happening closer to home. It began with the footsteps, not in the hallway, not outside, inside my apartment. I live on the 3rd floor of a brown brick walk-up just off Foster Boulevard. The building's nothing fancy. Thin walls, creaky plumbing, but the locks are solid, and there's only one way in and out. So when I woke up Thursday night to the sound of footsteps in my kitchen, measured heavy, I froze. They weren't frantic, like a thief. They weren't clumsy or loud. They were deliberate. I lay still, straining to hear over the pounding in my ears. The footsteps moved slowly from the kitchen to the hall, then stopped, right outside my bedroom door. I held my breath, listened for the turn of the knob. Nothing when I finally got the courage to get up, knife in hand. There was no one there. Nothing stolen. Nothing moved. The door had been locked from the inside, but on the kitchen table was a half-empty glass of water I didn't pour. And my front door? It was still locked. That's what made me go back to Creighton. I didn't say it out loud, but in my head, it made sense. If this started there, maybe it could end there. I left around 11 p.m. The sky was dark, but not cloudy, clear enough that the moonlit parts of the road where my headlights couldn't reach. I drove slower this time, more cautious. My phone sat face up in the passenger seat, camera already recording. Part of me still hoped I'd prove it was all just stress, some delusion, maybe a breakdown. But as soon as I passed the crooked wooden sign, that familiar pressure came back. Like the air was thicker here, like the road itself was closing in around me. I slowed the car to a crawl. Ahead, something flickered, Red, white, blue. I rolled forward and saw the source. Two police cruisers parked diagonally across the road. Their lights spun lazily, flashing into the trees. One had its driver door open. No one inside. I pulled over and stepped out slowly. The second cruiser had its engine running, but the headlights pointed into the woods. Useless in the dark, I called out, "Hello, officer?" Nothing. I walked closer and noticed a radio crackling inside one of the cars. Static, then just faintly, a voice. "Northbound perimeter, last seen on foot." That was it. No officers in sight, no roadblock signs, just two empty cars still running. And then I saw the blood, just a smear, on the back door of one cruiser, like someone had gripped it while collapsing. I backed away slowly, reaching for my phone, then stopped cold. There was a third set of tire marks behind my car. I hadn't heard anyone drive up. I turned, looked behind me. A van, dark blue, parked far enough back to keep its license plate in shadow. I hadn't seen it when I arrived, and now it was just sitting there. No engine noise, no headlights. I could feel eyes on me. I couldn't see them, but I knew someone was in that van, watching. I got back in my car and locked the doors. My hands trembled as I turned the key. The engine didn't start. I turned it again. Nothing. The third time, it kicked in. Just barely. The dashboard lights blinked weakly, like they were struggling to stay on. I didn't waste time. I reversed so fast I almost clipped the guardrail. The van didn't move. I drove past it, trying not to look, but I caught a glimpse of the windshield. There was someone inside, sitting perfectly still. No visible features, no movement, just a silhouette behind the glass. I didn't stop until I reached a gas station 20 minutes away. I parked under a bright floodlight and sat there for over an hour, trying to slow my breathing. Eventually, I went inside, bought a cup of burnt coffee, and asked the cashier, some skinny guy with a ponytail and sleep-deprived eyes, if he'd heard about anything happening on Craden Hill. He looked up slowly. "You been driving that road at night?" I nodded. He whistled low, then said, "Man, don't. That stretch is cursed." I stiffened. "Not cursed like haunted or whatever," he added. "I mean, weird stuff. People go missing. Patrol cars don't finish their shifts. And nobody ever sees nothing. My cousin used to work dispatch. He said they stopped sending anyone up there after 3 a.m. Unofficial policy." I asked him what kind of people went missing. He shrugged. "Couple joggers, a trucker, some guy last month, I think. Left his hazard lights blinking in the middle of the road. They found the car. Door still locked from the inside. No sign of the driver. I left the gas station with a full tank and a spinning head. That night, I didn't go home. I booked a motel off the interstate and pushed the dresser in front of the door. I left the bathroom light on, slept with my shoes on. I don't know if I even slept really. When I woke up the next morning, there was a new text on my phone. No number, no sender, just one sentence. "Leaving won't help you." I stared at the screen until it dimmed. Then I powered the phone off completely. I don't know what they want. I don't know who they are. But I know this isn't about a road anymore. It followed me home. Story 3. Loved you until you disappeared. I never thought love could feel like this. Like being stalked by your own shadow. Like every heartbeat could be your last. Like affection had claws. It started with a note. I'd just gotten home from work, late again. I manage events at a local hotel in Portland, Maine. It's mostly boring conferences and business banquets, but I don't mind the monotony. After what happened in New York 2 years ago, I welcomed a quiet life. Clean, predictable, safe. My apartment is on the third floor of an old Victorian house, repurposed into 4 units. I love it. The creaky floorboards, the big bay window, the way the ocean fog seeps in and makes everything feel like it belongs to a ghost. That night, I found the envelope on my doorstep. No postage, no name. Just my first name written in delicate cursive across the front. Elena. I froze. No one ever calls me Elena. Not since college. Not since... I didn't open it right away. I brought it inside, stared at it on the counter while my tea steeped. The envelope was off-white, the kind that soaks up fingerprints. Thick, expensive. The handwriting was oddly familiar. A soft loop on the L, a tight curl at the E. When I finally opened it, my hands were shaking. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Do you remember how I held you that night? That was it. I read it 5 times, heart pounding harder with each pass. Then I laughed. A nervous, hollow kind of laugh. Some kind of prank? A bitter ex. But no one knew. I lived here except for my boss, my landlord, and maybe 3 neighbors I barely spoke to. I tore it up, tossed it in the trash. I told myself not to think about it again. But that was the start. The next note came 2 days later. Slipped under my door while I was sleeping. You looked beautiful in that blue dress. I still think about it. I had worn a blue dress that day. At work, navy with a belt. Nothing special. I didn't tell anyone. Not even Kelsey, my best friend from the hotel, who I usually called when anything even remotely weird happened. Instead, I installed a camera above my door. One of those cheap Wi-Fi ones you can check from your phone. I didn't want to admit it yet, but something felt wrong. Too specific, too quiet. The camera caught nothing. Just wind, raccoons, the paperboy. Then came the phone call. No number. Just unknown. I should have ignored it. I did ignore it at first, but it kept ringing. And something deep in my gut told me this wasn't going to stop. I answered on the 4th ring. No one spoke, but I could hear breathing, steady, calm. Then, the same voice I heard sometimes in nightmares, soft, male, just the edge of a whisper. You sleep with the window cracked. Do you dream of me? I slammed the phone down so hard it bounced off the table. I reported it. The cops came. A young officer named Dobbs took notes and tried to keep a straight face, but I could see it in his eyes. Another lonely woman making up stalkers because she watches too many crime shows. They filed a report, suggested I change my number and maybe look into therapy. I did both, but the notes didn't stop. They got more personal. One was left inside my fridge. You hum when you microwave soup. I like that. Another arrived inside a package of cereal I hadn't opened yet. Stop eating this junk. You used to take better care of yourself. I felt sick. I tore the apartment apart, checking for hidden cameras. I started locking every door, even inside ones. I bought blackout curtains, stopped going out, stopped sleeping. The worst part was, he wasn't just watching me. He knew me, deeply, intimately. Things no one could know. Like the scar on the inside of my thigh I got when I was 12. Like the lullaby my mother used to sing before she died. Like my real name, Eleanor Grace Monroe. Only one person used to call me that. But he was dead. In college, I'd been briefly involved with a guy named James. He was quiet, charming in an old world kind of way, spoke like a poet, always bought flowers, always knew the perfect thing to say, until the day he didn't. We were walking back from a bookstore when he asked if I believed in fate. I said no. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. 3 days later, he attacked a girl 2 blocks from our dorm. She lived but barely. James was arrested, convicted, diagnosed as delusional. They said he believed he was in a predestined love cycle, and that every betrayal fed his need to punish and reclaim. He sent me letters from the institution even after I moved across the country. Dozens, hundreds. I burned them all. Then last year the facility reported he had committed suicide. No body was ever recovered, just blood and a note. She doesn't believe in fate, but I do. I'll prove it. I hadn't thought of James in months. Until now. I tried to move. I packed everything in a frenzy one night, ready to run. When I opened my front door, another note was taped to it. Run all you want, Elena. You'll always come back to me. Just like before. I dropped the box, sank to my knees. He was alive, or someone wanted me to believe he was. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch, kitchen knife in hand, every light on, blinds drawn. At 3:13 a.m., my phone buzzed. A message. No number. You forgot the way I used to trace your collarbone when you were falling asleep. Let me remind you. And attached was a photo of me, in bed, taken just hours earlier. The angle was from above, from the ceiling. I looked up slowly. There, tucked between 2 wooden beams, was a black circle, a tiny blinking light, a camera. I don't know what's real anymore. My reflection doesn't look like me. Every sound feels like a whisper. Every knock on the door sends my heart into panic. I've switched phones, changed locks, changed cities twice now. But he always finds me, always reminds me that I was loved once, and that love never really dies. It just learns how to haunt you. I thought I was being smart. The morning after I found the hidden ceiling camera, I packed only what I could carry. I left everything else. My furniture, my dishes, even my photo albums. It felt like shedding a skin that had started to rot. I bought a burner phone at a gas station on the interstate, paid cash for a rental car, and drove until I couldn't keep my eyes open. Somewhere between upstate New York and Pennsylvania, I pulled into a roadside motel with a broken vacancy sign and a front desk clerk who looked like he hadn't slept since the 80s. It was exactly what I needed. Forgettable, untraceable, safe. I used a fake name, Emily Ross. I don't even know where it came from. It just spilled out when the clerk asked. Maybe a memory of someone I once envied. Someone normal. Someone free. I didn't sleep much that night. Every creak in the wood-paneled walls felt like it was groaning under the weight of someone watching. I left the TV on, low volume, cycling through late-night infomercials for miracle knives and ceramic heaters. Anything to drown out my own thoughts. But by 4 a.m., I couldn't stay in the room anymore. I needed air, or maybe just not walls. I stepped outside, wrapped in my hoodie, and let the cool air fill my lungs. And that's when I saw it. Parked across the cracked lot was a silver Toyota Corolla. Clean, no rust, no dents. I never would have noticed it if not for one thing. There was a single yellow tulip on the windshield. My knees nearly buckled. Back in college, James used to bring me tulips, always yellow. He said they reminded him of the way my laugh sounded. Said the color suited me. Bright, but somehow still sad. I hadn't seen a yellow tulip in years. Not until now. I didn't go back inside. I ran. Across the street was a 24-hour diner with flickering fluorescent lights and a waitress who looked like she had no time for questions. I sat in the far booth and ordered coffee I couldn't drink. The place was nearly empty, save for a trucker passed out in a corner booth and a man in a green coat reading a local paper. I kept staring at the entrance, waiting for the door to open, for the bell to chime, for him to walk in. He didn't. Instead, at 4:31 a.m., my phone buzzed. The burner phone. The one no one should have known. Your hands shake when you're scared. You used to press them into my chest to calm down. You remember, don't you? The message came with a photo of me sitting in that very booth. My coffee untouched. My hoodie unzipped halfway. My fingers clutched together like I was praying. The angle was from inside the diner, but no one had come in. I turned slowly, scanning every face, every booth, every shadowed corner. Nothing. Just the man in the green coat. Except he wasn't reading anymore. He was gone. And so was the tulip. I left the diner before sunrise and drove south until the sky turned orange and my eyes stung with exhaustion. I didn't stop until I reached Lancaster, Pennsylvania, a quiet, Amish-bordering town I once visited on a childhood road trip. Something about it always stayed with me. Peaceful, out of time. I found a boarding house run by an elderly woman named Mrs. Donnelly. She didn't ask many questions, just handed me a key and pointed down a narrow hallway. Room 4, tiny, faded, warm. I told her I'd pay cash every week. She didn't blink. And for a while, things were quiet. No notes, no messages, no tulips. I started to believe I'd shaken him. That maybe it wasn't him after all. That maybe grief and fear had curled together in my brain and given birth to hallucinations dressed like memories. I let myself breathe. That was my mistake. The nightmare started 2 weeks later. I was dreaming of running. Through cornfields, the stalks were taller than me, slicing at my arms as I pushed through. The ground beneath my feet was wet, sticky. I stumbled and looked down. It wasn't soil. It was a sea of yellow tulip petals, mashing into pulp under my heels. Then I heard it. A man's voice. Not calling out, not shouting. Whispering, repeating the same phrase over and over again. Say you love me, say you love me, say you love me. I woke up gasping, my sheets damp with sweat. The room was dark, too dark. Even with the curtains drawn, it had never been this black before. That's when I saw it. A faint red dot, near the dresser, blinking, tiny, familiar. I scrambled out of bed and yanked open the drawer. Inside was a new phone, identical to the one I'd abandoned in Portland. It was already on. The home screen was a photo of me, sleeping. I threw up in the bathroom. My hands shook so badly I couldn't turn the faucet. When I finally looked up at the mirror, something caught my eye. Behind me. Just behind the cracked door. A shadow, too still to be movement, too defined to be imagined. I turned. Nothing. But taped to the inside of the bathroom door was a small note. Same handwriting, same ivory paper. Do you still hum in the morning, Elena? I'll find out soon enough. I didn't hum that morning. I screamed. Mrs. Donnelly called the sheriff. A kindly man with a thick accent and years of resignation carved into his face. He searched the room, took the phone, asked questions. I could tell he didn't believe me. Thought I was another paranoid city girl unraveling in his quiet town. I didn't blame him. If I were him, I wouldn't believe me either. But the camera was real. The phone was real. And the shadow? That still lingers. Every time I turn off a light, I catch it in the corner of my eye, standing, still, watching. It's been 4 days since then. No new messages, no new tulips. But last night, I found a long blonde hair on my pillow. I have dark hair. I live alone, and James used to say blondes reminded him of purity. Said if we ever had a daughter, he'd name her Lily and hope she had my voice but not my fear. I don't know what this is anymore. Love, obsession, haunting, all I know is this. Someone is trying to bring the past back, and this time, he wants me to love him for it, or die trying. I didn't plan on going to the church. It just happened. After a week of lingering silence, no texts, no photos, no fresh tulips, I started walking every day just to clear my head. I'd go for hours, tracing unfamiliar streets, letting the rhythm of my boots on pavement distract me from the truth rotting beneath my skin. He was waiting. That was the worst part. He was always waiting. And silence didn't mean absence. It meant patience. It meant planning. It meant he was closer than ever. The church sat at the edge of a wooded lot on the outskirts of Lancaster. A squat, crumbling thing with missing shingles and boards across half the windows. The sign out front had long since lost its lettering, leaving behind a faded white cross and streaks of rust like bloodstains running down its face. I wasn't drawn to it so much as pulled. Like something invisible had hooked into the base of my spine and reeled me toward the door. I pushed it open. It wasn't locked. Inside smelled like mold and burnt wax. Most of the pews were gone. The floor was warped in places. Sunlight filtered in through a broken stained glass window above the pulpit, casting dull reds and sickly greens across the ruined altar. And there, dead center beneath the cross, was a chair. Just one. Wooden, old, carved. And on the seat, like it had been waiting for me all along, a single cassette tape, labeled in familiar handwriting, "Play me, Eleanor." I stood there for a long time. I didn't touch it. I didn't want to. Every nerve in my body screamed not to. But curiosity is cruel. And dread, after a while, starts to feel like hunger. I took the tape. Back at the boarding house, I dug through Mrs. Donnelly's junk room until I found an old tape player beneath a pile of VHS cassettes and plastic-wrapped Christmas lights. I brought it back to my room. Locked the door, drew the curtains. The machine groaned when I pressed play, like it knew what it was about to awaken. Then, static for nearly 30 seconds, just static, until his voice emerged from the snow, smooth, patient, quietly delighted. "Do you remember the last time you said my name? It was raining. You were wearing that soft green sweater I used to bury my face in when I couldn't sleep. You had your keys in your hand, but you didn't leave. You wanted to, but you didn't. I couldn't breathe. They called me a monster. Isn't that funny? I told them I loved you, and they said that made it worse. How can love be wrong, Elena? How can something so beautiful be twisted into something vile? Just because people don't understand it?" I stopped the tape. My hands were trembling, but I couldn't help myself. I pressed play again. "I forgave you even then. Even when you testified. Even when you moved on and changed your name. I forgave every betrayal because I understood you. You were afraid. I made you feel things too deep for the world you live in. But that's okay. You don't have to be afraid anymore. Then silence. Another stretch of static, but buried under the white noise, so faint I almost missed it, was a song. A lullaby. My mother's lullaby. I felt like my insides had turned to ice. That song had never been recorded. Not that I knew of. It was hers. Ours. She used to hum it when I was sick, when I had nightmares, when I cried over James and didn't understand why love could hurt so much. I didn't sleep that night. At some point around 2 a.m., I checked the peephole in my door. I don't know why. I never heard footsteps, never heard a knock, but some instinct drove me to it. And on the hallway floor, directly outside my room, was a Polaroid. I opened the door slowly. The hallway was empty, cold, still. I picked up the photo. It was me, sleeping. Same bed, same pajamas, same posture. Except this time, there was something in the corner of the room. A shape, not fully visible, not quite human. Long arms, a slanted silhouette. Just enough detail to know it was there. Watching. I showed it to Mrs. Donnelly the next morning, told her someone had been inside, that someone was stalking me. She looked at the photo for a long time. Her fingers trembled slightly. Then she gave it back without a word and told me to leave. No refund, no explanation, just, you need to go. Now. I didn't argue. Something in her eyes told me she'd seen this before. I drove west. Didn't matter where. Just away. Each mile felt heavier than the last, like I was dragging something behind me that kept growing. I stopped only once, for gas and coffee, in a small town called Beach Hollow. Tiny place. Looked like it hadn't changed since the 50s. The clerk didn't look up when I walked in. The coffee was stale, the shelves half empty. As I paid, he finally looked at me, then frowned. You the girl from the paper? I blinked. What paper? He pointed behind me. There, taped to the wall beside the door, was a crumpled flyer, black and white, faded. At the top, missing. Below, Eleanor Grace Monroe, a photo of me, from college. And handwritten at the bottom in the same looping script as the notes. Found her. She doesn't know it yet. She will. I tore it down. Ran to the car. Locked the doors. My phone buzzed. A message. Did you like the tape, sweetheart? I made it just for you. The next one's better. It has your favorite sound. Attached was an audio file. I didn't want to play it, but my finger moved on its own. It was breathing, not mine. His, and behind it, the faint, distant click-click of a camera shutter. Over and over and over again. It's not just love anymore. It's performance. He wants me to feel him, to relive it all, to see myself through his eyes. He's building something. A story. A museum. A shrine. And I'm the centerpiece. I think I'm already dead in his mind. And everything I'm doing now is just a part of the ending he's written. But I swear, I won't let him turn me into a memory. Not yet. Not like this. Story 4. The contract for a life I never used to drink much. Maybe a beer after work, a bourbon on bad days. But over the last 3 months, bourbon had become dinner. And whatever was cheap and on tap had become dessert. I sat hunched at the edge of the bar at Mercer's Tavern. A dim hole in the wall off Route 22, just outside of Pittsburgh. It was the kind of place where people came to forget, not to celebrate. Flickering neon beer signs buzzed above the cracked vinyl booths. The walls were yellowed with age and smoke, and the jukebox hadn't worked since Obama's first term. It was a Tuesday. Rain ticked steadily against the windows like a clock counting down. My business was circling the drain, an auto shop I inherited from my father. He ran it for 30 years and left it to me like some noble torch, but I'd failed him. In a world of electric cars, endless regulations, and customers who wanted quick fixes at half the cost, I couldn't keep up. I owed back rent, credit card bills, utility shut-off notices. The final nail came that morning when the bank called to tell me my loan extension had been denied. So I drank, because what else was left? The bartender, a wiry man with a long scar along his neck, poured me another without asking. I nodded thanks and turned to stare into the glass like it might have answers. That's when he walked in. He didn't belong there. That was the first thing I noticed. Not because he was clean-cut or overdressed, but because he was deliberate. Every movement, every glance. Like a man rehearsing a part in a play, only he knew the script too. He took the stool 2 seats from me and ordered something I didn't catch. His voice was smooth, not casual, but measured. He waited until the bartender walked away before turning to me. "Rough night?" he asked, nodding toward my drink. I shrugged. "Rough month?" He smiled, thin, knowing. "You look like a man who's run out of options." I didn't answer. I didn't like the way he said it, but something about him pulled me in. Maybe it was the way he spoke without judgment. Maybe it was the calm confidence in his posture. Or maybe it was just that, in that moment, I needed someone to see me. "I work at opportunities," he said. "I help people who the system's forgotten." I laughed bitterly. "You a loan shark or a priest?" He smiled wider. "Neither. Just someone who believes that every man has value, even when the world says otherwise." I was silent. He reached into his coat and pulled out a thin leather folder, worn but clean, and slid it across the bar toward me. "Read it," he said. "Or don't. I won't push. But I can promise this. If you sign, your debts will disappear. You'll get 50,000 in cash by tomorrow morning. No tricks. Just one task, carried out within the next week." I stared at the folder like it might bite me. "What's the task?" "Special," he said. "Tailored to the person. Nothing immoral. Nothing illegal." I barked a laugh. "Then why the mystery?" He tilted his head. "Because most people don't see opportunity when it knocks. They see risk, fear, and they waste time asking questions when they could already be living a better life." I should have walked out right then. Should have tossed that folder back in his face and told him to go screw himself. But I didn't. Because the landlord was coming in 3 days. Because the electric bill was overdue. Because my ex-wife wouldn't stop calling about unpaid child support. And because deep down I was tired. So goddamn tired. I opened the folder. The contract inside was only 1 page, typed in crisp font with a signature line at the bottom. No lawyer names, no company letterhead. Just a few short paragraphs about mutual benefit, timely compensation, confidentiality. It didn't even say what the special task was. "This is insane," I muttered. He nodded. "Maybe. Or maybe it's the one chance you've been waiting for." I don't know what possessed me. Maybe I thought I could walk away later. Maybe I assumed it was some weird prank. Maybe the booze had dulled my survival instinct. But I signed. His smile never reached his eyes. He took the folder back gently, slid it inside his coat, and placed a single key on the counter next to me. An old brass motel key attached to a numbered tag. "Room 9, he said, "Highway Rest Motel, 5 miles east. Tomorrow, noon. Then he stood and left without another word. I sat there for a while, staring at the key. It felt heavier than it should have. The bartender said nothing, just gave me a side eye like he'd seen men sign away worse for less. I left Mercer's round midnight. The rain had stopped, but the streets were still slick, glowing with puddled neon. I drove home, the key resting in my jacket pocket like a stone. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next morning, there was an envelope under my apartment door. No name, no return address. Inside was $50,000 in crisp hundreds, bundled and clean. I counted it twice, then again. My heart should have been racing. Instead, it felt like it had sunk, because the moment I touched that money, I knew, deep down, that something was wrong. At 11:45 a.m., I pulled into the gravel parking lot of the Highway Rest Motel. Room 9 was at the far end, tucked between a vending machine and a busted ice dispenser. The key slid in easily. The door opened to a small sterile room. White sheets, yellowing lamp. On the bed was a cardboard box, and on top of that, a manila envelope. My name was written on it. Inside was a phone, a single disposable burner, and a photo. A man in his 60s, grey beard, blue windbreaker, standing in line at a pharmacy. Below it was a name, an address, a time, Thursday 4 p.m. That was all. I didn't know what the task was, but I knew who it involved. I stared at the photo until my eyes blurred, my stomach churning. I had a bad feeling this wasn't going to be about returning someone's lost dog, and it sure as hell wasn't going to be legal. I didn't touch the box, not at first. I just stood there in that motel room, watching it like it might move on its own. The lamp buzzed faintly beside the bed. The only sound in the room aside from my own breathing. That little detail, how loud my breathing sounded, was what unsettled me the most. Like the room had swallowed everything else. Like I was already somewhere I didn't belong. Eventually, I reached down and lifted the box. It was heavier than I expected. I sat on the edge of the bed, laid it on my lap, and opened it. Inside were surgical gloves, a folded-up pair of disposable scrubs, a scalpel sealed in sterile plastic, and what looked like a vacuum-sealed blood collection kit. No instructions, no warnings, no explanation, just tools. I dropped the lid and stood up fast, heart hammering. My mouth went dry. I stared at the envelope again, the photo, the man. Was I supposed to kill him? Harvest him? I paced the room, 15 steps one way, 15 back, over and over. A part of me wanted to drive straight to the police. Another part, deeper, darker, kept whispering, "You signed it. You took the money." But this wasn't what I'd agreed to. Right? There had to be a mistake, or a choice, a way out. I shoved the box back onto the bed and left the room, locking it behind me. I didn't go home. I drove. For hours, aimless. I ended up at a diner, somewhere north of the city. I don't even remember the name. It was half empty, smelled like burnt coffee and freezer grease. I sat in the corner booth, ordered toast and black coffee I never touched. I just kept staring out the rain-streaked window at the highway, hoping I'd wake up and find all of this was some sick dream. That's when I saw him. The man from the photo. He was walking out of the pharmacy across the street, holding a paper bag in one hand and a cane in the other. He looked tired, normal, human. A guy you'd never notice unless someone handed you a picture of his face. My stomach turned. It wasn't Thursday yet. He wasn't supposed to be here, but here he was, watched him shuffle across the lot, pause at his old silver sedan, then slowly lower himself into the driver's seat. My mind was racing. Why had they given me his picture? What did they want from me? And more importantly, what would happen if I didn't go through with it? I pulled the envelope back out of my jacket and flipped it over. I hadn't noticed it before, but there was something faint, almost invisible, written on the back in tiny gray letters. We're always watching. Fail to act, and the contract doubles. In blood. I dropped the envelope like it had burned me. There was no doubt now. Whatever this was, it was real. They were real. And backing out wasn't just a matter of walking away. I didn't know who they were, but I knew they had eyes on me. Probably more than that. I drove back home in silence. The box and its contents burned into my memory. I didn't sleep. I didn't even lie down. I just sat on the couch, lights off, front door locked 3 times over, as if that could keep whatever was coming at bay. Thursday came fast. At 2:45 p.m., I was parked outside the address they gave me. It was a small brick duplex in a quiet neighborhood. The kind with trimmed hedges, lawn gnomes, wind chimes, birds chirped somewhere off in the distance. Nothing about the place felt dangerous, but my hands were shaking. I'd brought the box. I didn't even know why. Some part of me still believed this was a test, that they just wanted to see if I'd show up. That maybe, if I knocked, the man would answer, and someone would step out from behind a tree and say, "Congratulations, you passed." And the nightmare would be over. I sat in my car until 3:59 p.m. At exactly 4, the man appeared. Same windbreaker, same cane. He was locking his front door. I don't remember getting out of the car. I just remember standing behind him, heart thudding, box in one hand, the other clenched so tight I couldn't feel my fingers. "Excuse me," I said. He turned slow, confused. His eyes were pale blue and kind. "Yes?" I froze. My mouth opened, but no words came. I was supposed to say something, anything, but my throat was closing in on itself. I looked at the box, back at him. He must have seen something in my face. He stepped back slightly, grip tightening on the cane. "You all right, son?" he asked. And that's when the realization hit me like a hammer to the gut. He didn't know. He wasn't part of it. He wasn't bait. He wasn't in on some setup. He was just a man who someone, something, had marked for death. And I was the idiot who'd walked into their trap with open arms. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Then I turned and ran. I didn't go home. I didn't go anywhere familiar. I drove until my gas light blinked on, then pulled into a rest stop off the interstate, parked in a dark corner, and sat in the silence, trying not to fall apart. My phone buzzed. Not my regular phone, the burner. It had no caller ID. Just a message. "You had one job." Another buzz. "Failure has consequences." I stared at the screen, chest tight. Then a photo appeared. It was of the man, the one from the photo, lying on the sidewalk. Blood pooled beneath his head, eyes wide open. And standing in the background, blurred but unmistakable, was me. I dropped the phone. I should have screamed. Should have called someone. But my voice was gone. My thoughts. Gone. I sat in that car for what felt like hours, staring at the trees lining the rest stop, wondering if someone was watching from just beyond the shadows. When I finally drove off, the road felt different. Narrower, like it was closing in. That night, I didn't go back to my apartment, because if they could get a photo of me seconds after I ran, then they could be anywhere. I didn't sleep for 3 nights, not in the traditional sense. I'd close my eyes for a few seconds at a time, but every sound, every passing car, every creak of motel wood jolted me awake like a gunshot. I moved between cheap motels and gas station parking lots like a fugitive. I used cash, ditched the burner phone, and wrapped the motel curtains shut with duct tape. Still, I never felt safe, not after what I saw in that photo. They knew where I was, even after I ran. They saw me standing there, in the background, while that man bled out on the sidewalk. Like I'd been marked, branded, like I belonged to them now. I told myself he could have fallen. Maybe his heart gave out. Maybe it wasn't me. Maybe they were bluffing. But I didn't believe that. The man in the windbreaker was dead, and they wanted me to know I'd failed. The box had disappeared. I don't even remember throwing it out. I remember carrying it with me, always, like a cursed object. But one day, I reached for it, and it was gone. And in its place, inside my backpack, was something new, another envelope. No return address, no creases, like it had been placed there by invisible hands. Inside was a photo. A woman this time, younger than the last. 30s maybe. She had short dark hair and wore hospital scrubs. The photo looked like it had been taken with a long lens from across the street. She was stepping out of a back door of a medical center, holding her phone in one hand, coffee in the other. Below the photo was a name, Miranda K., a location, a time, Saturday 8 p.m. That was 2 days from now. No box this time, no scalpel, no gloves, just the photo and a single line written on the back. You still owe us. I didn't eat for a day. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. My stomach felt hollow, like it had curled in on itself. I tried calling a friend from a payphone, a guy I used to work with back when I was a mechanic. He didn't pick up, left a voicemail that said something weird about being instructed to cut ties. I didn't understand. I hadn't told anyone. But they had. They'd gotten to him. Maybe others. Who else knew I existed? That night I drove past the address they gave me. I told myself it was recon, just to prove I wasn't going to do it. The place was a small apartment complex off a quiet road near the outskirts of Harrisburg. The kind of place where people keep to themselves. I parked across the street, engine off, headlights dimmed, and watched. At 7:52, she came out, same woman, Miranda. She wore her scrubs, now partially covered by a windbreaker, and carried a paper bag. Maybe dinner, maybe just something normal, something human. I watched her unlock her car and sit inside for a moment before driving away. She looked tired. I stayed in my car another hour. Then I vomited on the curb and drove away. I didn't know what they wanted me to do. Were they trying to make me a murderer? An accomplice? Or just a pawn in something bigger? I started noticing things after that. The same black SUV parked 2 cars down from my motel room one night. A woman I didn't recognize, smiling too long at me at a gas station. The phone ringing in my room with no one on the line. Just breathing, heavy, steady, like they were waiting for me to break. I nearly did. I kept thinking of the man in the windbreaker. I didn't hurt him. I walked away, but they didn't care. And now there was Miranda. Alive? For now? I couldn't warn her. Couldn't explain. What would I say? Hey, some secret organization is using me as a puppet in a death game. I saw your picture. You should probably run. She'd call the cops. And maybe they would come for her faster. So I followed her the next night. Not close. Just enough to see where she went. Grocery store, ATM, home, nothing strange. But when I parked a few blocks down and got out to walk, I found a note tucked under my windshield. It was short. Still watching. Stop hesitating. That night I returned to the motel and checked under the bed, behind the TV, even inside the ceiling tiles. I found nothing, but when I turned the shower on, a single message had been scrawled in the condensation on the mirror, like it had been written before I got there. You belong to us. I punched the mirror. It cracked down the middle like a fault line. That was when I decided I was going to the police. I didn't care what happened. I'd bring the photo, the envelope. I'd tell them everything. I drove to the nearest station around noon the next day. Took me 20 minutes to even get out of the car. My hands were sweating. My heart hadn't stopped racing in days. When I walked inside, there was only one officer at the front desk. I asked to report a threat. A group harassing me. Possibly involved in something bigger. Organized crime. She nodded slow. You got evidence? Yes, I said. Photos, notes, names. I opened my bag, reached in, everything was gone. No photo, no envelope, no burner phone, just empty pockets and dust. I had it, I said. It was right here. Someone must have... She looked bored now. You sure you're not just tired? You don't look good. I left without saying anything else. They'd cleaned me out, erased the only evidence I had. I hadn't even noticed. Back in the car, I screamed. Not words, just sound. Raw, cracked, desperate sound. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my fingers locked up. Then my dashboard lit up. An alert. New message, task moved. 6th and Reading, 8 Mau PM sharp. No number, no source. Just there, waiting. I slammed the dash. Again, but the message stayed. That night, I sat at the edge of 6th and Reading, an abandoned shopping center. Rusted signage, cracked parking lot, not a soul in sight. At 8 hours sharp, headlights blinked behind me. A black van pulled up, no windows. The back door slid open, and something was pushed out. A man, unconscious, duct tape across his mouth, bleeding from his temple, hands zip-tied behind his back. Then the van pulled away. Just me and the man on the pavement. No instructions, just him, and the weight of the debt I apparently still owed. Story 5. The Police Hunt. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to run from the police. I've never even had a speeding ticket. Never touched drugs. Never gotten into fights. Hell, I work at a hardware store in a quiet suburb of Eugene, Oregon. My days are spent helping people pick out paint swatches and explaining the difference between flathead and Phillips screws. But now I'm out here, hunched in the woods, my breath fogging the cold air, listening to the distant chop of a police helicopter searching for me. Every crack of a twig sends my pulse into overdrive. My shirt is soaked with sweat, and my hands won't stop shaking because I saw something I wasn't supposed to see. It started 2 nights ago. I just finished a late shift. Inventory counts always ran over. It was nearly midnight, and the streets were dead quiet, except for the buzzing overhead lights in the parking lot. I remember fumbling with my keys, balancing a coffee I didn't even want, when I heard the sound. A thud, then a scuffle, then silence. It came from behind the dumpster at the edge of the lot. I should have minded my business. I should have just gotten in the car and left. But curiosity is a funny thing. It doesn't always feel like a choice. I crept over, thinking maybe someone was passed out or hurt. but what I saw made the coffee slip from my hand and spill all over my boots. A man lay crumpled on the pavement, blood soaking through his white shirt. His eyes were wide open, staring past me. Another man, taller, wearing a dark hoodie, was standing over him, holding something shiny in his hand. A knife. The guy in the hoodie turned when he heard the cup drop. We locked eyes for half a second. He didn't run. He didn't speak. He just watched me, then slowly stepped backward into the shadows and disappeared behind the dumpster. I froze. Everything in my body screamed run, but my feet were rooted to the ground. That's when the sirens came. At first, I was relieved. I thought someone else must have called it in. But when the cruiser rolled up and two officers jumped out with their weapons drawn, the look on their faces wasn't relief. It was suspicion. Hands in the air. Don't move. I obeyed immediately. I tried to explain, told them I just found the body, that I didn't do anything. But they weren't listening. They forced me to the ground, cuffed me, and read me my rights. All while the body lay just 10 feet away, soaking in his own blood. They tossed me in the back of the cruiser and drove me to the station. I kept trying to tell them about the man I saw, the real killer, but they acted like I was making it up. The detective who questioned me, Detective Harrow, was a thick-necked guy with a scar under one eye. He stared at me for long minutes without saying anything. "We found your fingerprints on the victim's jacket," he finally said. "Because I checked to see if he was alive," I shouted. "I thought he might still be breathing." He didn't look convinced. "There's no security footage, no other witnesses. You were alone with the victim, and you have no alibi. That's not a great position to be in, son." They kept me overnight in a holding cell. I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the moment. The killer's face, those hollow eyes, the way he didn't panic when he saw me. It was like he wanted me to see him. By morning, something changed. They brought me out for transfer, said I was being moved to county lockup until formal charges could be filed. But as we walked toward the transport van, I saw something strange. One of the officers escorting me wasn't in uniform. He wore a charcoal gray suit and dark glasses, even though it was cloudy. He didn't say anything, just nodded toward the van. I got a chill that went straight down my spine. When they opened the back door, I heard shouting. The driver was arguing with someone on the radio. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was urgent. Then everything happened fast. There was a loud pop. Something exploded near the driver's side mirror. A tire blew out. The vehicle rocked, and the suited man drew a gun. Not a police-issued one either. Something sleeker, cleaner. He aimed it right at me. The real cops panicked. Guns came out. Someone shouted, "He's not one of us." And in the chaos I ran. I don't know how I got out without being shot. Adrenaline took over. I vaulted a fence, tore through someone's backyard, nearly got mauled by a dog, and eventually ducked into an old construction site near the train tracks. And now, I've been running ever since. It's been 36 hours. I'm cold, hungry, and terrified. The cops think I'm a murderer, but that man in the suit, I think he wanted to make sure I never talked. And he wasn't acting alone. I broke into a library after hours to get online. There's no news about any other suspects, but there's a private security firm listed in a strange Reddit thread, Dextra Group. People claim they're a paramilitary outfit that cleans up certain messes for the government. There's a blurry photo of a man in a suit on that thread. It's him. He wasn't after me because I'm a suspect. He was after me because I saw the killer. And now I don't know who to run from more, the police or the ones who don't exist on paper at all. I have one goal now: find out who the victim was and why someone wanted him dead so badly they are willing to erase me to cover it up. The worst part? I have this gnawing feeling that I've seen that killer before, just not on this side of the law. I thought hiding in a public place would buy me some time. It didn't. The library was quiet, deathly quiet. The kind of quiet that makes every shuffle of paper sound like a scream. I huddled in the corner between two rows of books, using the cracked library laptop to search for anything about Dexter Group. My heart racing every time the automatic door at the front hissed open. The name showed up in only fringe forms, places where the posts looked like they were written by paranoid conspiracy theorists and quickly downvoted into oblivion. Most of them had been deleted or buried, but a few scraps remained. One post read, "Dexter doesn't cover up crime. They clean up people. If you saw something, you didn't. If you were there, you weren't. They don't kill, they erase." Another. It's always the same. Suit, no badge, silent. They move in when law enforcement fails to finish the job. Watch for the sunglasses. If they show up, it's already too late. I closed the laptop and pressed my back against the shelves. My skin crawled with sweat, despite the air conditioning. My throat was dry, but I didn't dare drink from the nearby fountain. My eyes kept darting to the glass doors. I felt like prey in a zoo enclosure, just waiting for the lock to click shut behind me. At one point, a girl, maybe a college student, sat at the terminal next to me. She was browsing something innocent, probably homework. She looked at me, gave a faint smile, then went back to her screen. But I couldn't smile back. I couldn't even pretend. Because behind her, through the window, parked across the street, a black SUV, tinted windows, idle engine. I grabbed my jacket and bolted through the emergency exit. The alarm screamed, but I didn't look back. I ducked into the alley behind the building, nearly slipping on the damp concrete, and ran until my lungs burned. I ended up at an abandoned train depot about 5 miles out of town. I'd seen it years ago when I was helping a buddy film a low-budget horror short. The place had been out of commission for years. Graffiti-covered walls, rusted rail cars, shattered windows. No electricity, no surveillance. Just wind whistling through hollow steel and rats nesting in forgotten corners. I pushed open a side door and stepped into the darkness. My footsteps echoed off the concrete. The air inside smelled like mold and rust, with a metallic tang that reminded me of blood. I found a corner behind an overturned vending machine and collapsed. Only then did I let myself cry. It wasn't loud, just silent shaking, tears pooling in my palms. I wasn't crying because I was scared. I'd moved past that. This was something deeper, like my body realizing I didn't exist anymore. The person I was, Kyle from the hardware store, was gone. The world thought I was a killer. My face was probably plastered on every news site in Oregon. I didn't even have a phone anymore. I'd smashed it after the library. I couldn't risk being tracked, but something about that SUV still haunted me. The way it was parked, the angle, too perfect, like someone wanted me to see it. A message or a warning. I fell asleep that night with a rusted pipe clutched in my hand like a weapon. The sound of shifting wind and scurrying rats kept jerking me awake. and every time I opened my eyes, I thought I saw a shadow move just out of reach. A footstep, a whisper, a trick of the light maybe. Maybe not. By morning, I was starving. I risked walking into a rundown convenience store off an old highway exit. I kept my head down, grabbed a loaf of bread and a bottle of water, and paid in cash. The cashier didn't seem to recognize me, but as I walked out, I caught him picking up the landline behind the counter, his eyes flicking toward my back. I ran again. It wasn't until later that afternoon that I found someone I could trust, or at least someone I used to trust. His name was Jordan. We'd gone to high school together. He'd moved to the city years ago, now worked freelance security gigs, the kind where you don't ask questions and don't tell stories. He was paranoid by nature, always carrying 2 burner phones and checking for tailing cars. I waited until after dark and found him smoking outside a bar near the freight yard. I called his name once. He froze, turned, and stared at me like I was a ghost. "Jesus," he whispered, "I thought you were dead." "I might be," I said. Soon. We sat in his truck for an hour. I told him everything. The body, the man in the hoodie, the knife, the false arrest, the suit, Dextra. He didn't interrupt, just listened. He wasn't surprised. Not really. But when I mentioned Dextra, his fingers clenched the steering wheel so hard, his knuckles turned white. "I've heard the name," he said quietly. "Never in good company." I begged him for help, somewhere to hide, a contact, anything. He hesitated, then gave me the keys to an old hunting cabin upstate. His uncle's place, off the grid. No phone, no power, no neighbors for 10 miles. "Don't use your name, don't stop in town. If you see another car on that road, don't go to the cabin. Turn around." Got it? I nodded. My throat closed up with something I couldn't name. Guilt? Fear? Hopeless gratitude? I drove all night. The roads wound through thick pine forests. The only light came from the moon, pale and full. Every bend in the road made me flinch, thinking headlights would appear in the rearview mirror. But no one followed. At least, I thought no one followed. I reached the cabin at dawn. It was as promised, small, worn down, and cold as hell. I lit a fire, drank from the stream, and curled up on the floor under an old wool blanket. But I couldn't sleep, because while I was unpacking my borrowed backpack, something slipped out I didn't recognize. A folded piece of paper, thin, like from a hotel notepad. One word, "Run," and written beneath it in red ink, "You were never supposed to see his face." My blood turned to ice, because Jordan had handed me that bag, and I never told him what the killer looked like. I didn't sleep that night. The fire in the cabin hissed low, casting flickering shadows against the log walls. Outside, the forest groaned in the wind, branches scraping against the roof like claws. Every time the floorboards creaked, I sat up, pipe gripped tight in my hand. I kept replaying that note in my head over and over. You were never supposed to see his face. It was the handwriting that got to me. Not rushed, not scrawled, neat, calm, controlled. Like someone who knew they had time. And that part, about his face, that felt personal. I'd never told Jordan what the man at the crime scene looked like. I hadn't said a word about that in the truck. So either he guessed, or someone else slipped that note into the bag. Someone who touched it after I passed out in the depot. Or maybe before I left the library. Someone who was watching, By morning, I was already planning to leave the cabin. But when I opened the door, I froze. There were prints in the mud outside. Not shoe prints, boot prints, deep ones. At least 2 different sizes. They circled the cabin, once, twice, then vanished back into the woods. No tire marks, no engine sounds during the night. Just footprints. The hair on my arm stood up. Whoever it was, they'd been here while I slept, and they hadn't bothered to knock. They just watched. I packed what little I had and started walking east toward an old logging road Jordan mentioned in passing. He said it hadn't been used in years, but if I followed it for long enough, it would lead back to the highway. I hiked for hours, moving as fast as I could without making noise. The trees grew thicker, the sun barely cutting through the canopy. Every snapping twig made my spine stiffen. Every bird that suddenly went quiet made me want to crouch and hide. Eventually, I found an abandoned ranger station, boarded up, half rotten, and slumped sideways on its foundation. But it had a working rain barrel, and inside, a dusty first aid kit nailed to the wall. I stayed there that night, and that's when the dream started. It wasn't a normal dream, not like the ones I used to have. This one felt deliberate, like someone else had scripted it. I was back at the parking lot, standing over the body. But when I turned to run, I didn't see the man in the hoodie. I saw myself, standing in the exact spot the killer had been, holding the knife, watching me. But my reflection didn't move like me. It smiled, slowly, coldly, then, in a voice that was both mine and not mine, it said, "You saw me because you are me." I woke up choking on my own breath. My shirt clung to me, drenched in sweat. The room was dark, completely dark, but I swore I heard something shift in the corner. I held my breath. A scrape, like fingernails dragging across wood. I turned on my flashlight. There was nothing there, but carved into the inside of the cabin door, fresh and raw, were 2 words: "Found you." I left before sunrise, not even stopping for water. My body was on autopilot now. Flee, hide, repeat. But my brain was starting to unravel. I couldn't shake the idea that maybe this was bigger than Dextra. Maybe this wasn't just about a cover-up. Maybe they were trying to make me disappear from the inside out. 2 days later, I hit a gas station on the outskirts of some no-name town in Idaho. I was starving, lightheaded, and desperate. I bought a sandwich with my last $10 and sat outside behind the dumpster, chewing in silence. That's when I heard it. A voice, soft, familiar. "Kyle?" I looked up and felt my stomach plummet. It was Shane, my old co-worker from the hardware store. He looked different, skinnier, his eyes sunken, movements twitchy. He had no reason to be there. Not in Idaho, not behind a gas station 3 states away. What are you doing here?" I asked. He hesitated, then he smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Looking for you." I backed up. "Why?" He stepped closer. "They said if I found you, they'd let me go." I didn't believe them, man. "But now that you're here..." His hands trembled. His voice cracked. "Now that I've done it, maybe they'll let me sleep again." I ran. He didn't chase me, but I heard him laughing behind me. That brittle, unhinged kind of laughter that made my skin crawl. I found an abandoned diner about half a mile down the road. Windows broken, booths covered in leaves, kitchen rotting away. I hid in the walk-in freezer, curled behind old boxes of crumbling styrofoam. I stayed there for nearly 2 days. No food, no water. Just me, the silence, and my thoughts. But the worst part? I found something under one of the freezer shelves. A phone, no battery, just a single image still etched into the cracked screen. It showed a man sitting in a diner booth. Me, taken from outside the window, a week ago. My reality was shattering. Nothing felt safe. Nothing made sense. My memories felt fragile, almost scripted, like they'd been implanted, designed. And then came the last straw. That night, as I drifted in and out of sleep, I heard static. At first I thought it was in my head, but it was real, coming from the busted PA system in the kitchen. Then a voice crackled through, distorted and slow. The experiment is entering its final phase. Subject is unstable. Memory loops collapsing. Prepare for closure. I sat there frozen, trying to convince myself it was just a prank. A leftover tape, a glitch. But then the PA went silent, and the screen on the dead phone lit up. We're almost done with you. I don't know who they are anymore. I don't know if it's Dextra, or the police, or something even deeper. Some black budget program testing the limits of memory, identity, fear. I don't know if the man I saw was real, or just a mirror they put in front of me. All I know is I'm not safe. And I think I never have been. The first thing I noticed when I woke up was the silence. Not the kind of silence that feels peaceful. Not the hush of wind or the soft rustle of leaves outside a window. No, this was something else. This was a constructed silence. Heavy. Synthetic. Like the world had been pressed mute. Or I was sealed inside something too thick for sound to escape. I opened my eyes, expecting to see the rusted walls of the diner freezer. But instead, I was staring at smooth white panels, backlit, seamless, sterile. The air smelled like antiseptic and rubber. I blinked several times, tried to sit up, and immediately realized I couldn't move my arms. They were strapped down, wrist restraints, thick medical grade, Velcro and steel. My legs were bound too. I was lying on a padded gurney under fluorescent lights that made everything buzz faintly. I wasn't in the diner anymore. I wasn't even near Idaho. I was somewhere else entirely. Panic rose in my throat like bile. I twisted my wrists against the restraints until I felt the skin break. Blood soaked into the edges of the cuffs, but they didn't give an inch. My breath hitched and the walls began to blur at the edges. That's when the door opened. It slid silently into the wall, revealing a man in a charcoal suit. The same kind of suit the man at the police station wore. The same suit I saw watching from that black SUV days ago. But it wasn't him. This one was younger, clean-shaven, hair combed in a perfect side part. No name tag, no badge. He smiled like he'd been expecting me to wake up. "Kyle," he said smoothly, stepping closer. "We've been monitoring your progress. Impressive, really." I tried to speak, but my mouth was dry. Every word felt like it scraped the back of my throat. "Where am I?" I croaked. He tilted his head. "That's the wrong question. The right question is, who are you?" Something in my chest clenched. What did he mean by that? Was this some kind of mind game? "I didn't kill that man," I said. My voice cracked halfway through the sentence. "I saw who did. He was in a hoodie. He had a knife. I told the cops." He held up a hand, cutting me off. "We know what you saw. That's not the issue." He pulled a small device from his pocket, a tablet of some kind, and tapped the screen. "The issue is why you were there." I opened my mouth to argue, but something shifted in the corner of the room. A second man was standing there now. I hadn't heard him come in. He hadn't moved. He was just there, taller, bulkier. No face mask, no glasses. But his presence sucked all the warmth out of the room. The man in the suit followed my gaze and nodded toward him. "Do you recognize him?" I frowned. "No, should I?" He gave a small, satisfied smile. "You should. You saw him behind the dumpster, the man with the knife." I froze. "That's him?" I whispered, but something was wrong. The face was familiar, yes, but not from that night. No, from before. From the hardware store. My manager, Gary, memories flooded back in disjointed fragments. Gary staying late with me that week, Gary locking up the back door. Gary getting a weird call on the store phone and whispering something about a delivery that's not on the books. He was there that night, at the scene. But the hoodie, the knife. I told the police I saw a stranger. Had I repressed it, misremembered, or had someone altered the memory? The man in the suit leaned in closer. "You were part of something, Kyle. Whether you knew it or not, you were a part of Phase 3. I stared at him. "What the hell are you talking about?" He turned the tablet toward me. There was a video file paused at the start. Title: Phase 3A Observation Log Kodobi 26 MP4. He pressed play. The footage was grainy, monochrome. Surveillance angle. It showed me sitting in a white room. But this wasn't now. I looked different, thinner, pale. My hair was shorter. I was wearing a hospital gown. I was talking to someone off camera. "Who is that?" I whispered. The man in the suit just kept watching. "In the video," I said, "I saw him kill that man. I swear I wasn't supposed to be there." And then the voice off screen said, "You were placed there. You passed the proximity threshold. Tell us what he looked like." And my on-screen self said, "He looked like me." The room tilted. I started hyperventilating. My chest was tight. My arms strained against the cuffs again. The pain flaring as the dried blood reopened. "What is this?" I gasped. "What are you doing to me?" The man didn't answer. Instead, he turned off the tablet, placed it on a nearby tray, and said, "We've erased the experiment from the records. You were never formally arrested. No court case, no headlines. As far as the world is concerned, Kyle Whitman never existed after July 3rd. My heart stopped. That was over a month ago. What happened to the man who died? I choked out. He looked at me. There was no murder. I stared in disbelief. But I saw him. You saw what we needed you to see. You responded as expected. You fled. You clung to your identity, your guilt, your innocence. All highly valuable data points. I wanted to scream. I wanted to rip out of that bed and break his face. But I couldn't move. Couldn't even think straight. Then he said the final blow. We're going to release you soon, but not as Kyle. I blinked. What? We'll give you a new name, a new past, a carefully planted record of employment, a fabricated medical history. You'll go somewhere quiet, remote, live out the remainder of your life, comfortably. My voice cracked. And if I don't go along with this? He turned and walked toward the door. At the threshold, he paused. If you don't, we reboot, wipe again, start over. Maybe next time you'll cooperate sooner. The door slid shut. I don't know how long I was left in that room. Time slipped sideways. I drifted in and out of consciousness. They pumped something into my veins, calmness and confusion, like floating underwater in lukewarm soup. But in the rare moments of clarity, one thought kept returning. I did see the man behind the dumpster. He wasn't a stranger. He wasn't Gary. And he didn't just kill someone. He was trying to warn me. The last thing I remember before they wiped me again was a flash from the surveillance footage. One frame, maybe less. My own face, grinning, holding the knife, whispering something under my breath. I couldn't hear the audio, but I read the words on my lips. You were never real to begin with. And then, darkness. Story 6. The last caretaker never left this place. I never planned to take the job. Hell, I never even wanted to be in Vermont, let alone in the middle of a pine-choked forest, where the only sounds were the wind moaning through dead branches and the occasional distant caw of a crow. But when you've been laid off twice in 8 months and your bank account looks like a dried-up puddle, pride stops being a luxury you can afford. The ad was simple. Caretaker needed for private estate. Room and board included. $4,500 month. Must be discreet. I answered it within 15 minutes. A man named Raymond called me back that night. His voice was smooth, emotionless. The kind that didn't match the cheap cell phone static it came through. He said the job was remote, that I wouldn't have to deal with anyone, and that all I had to do was make sure the house stayed in working order. Keep it clean, report if anything broke, don't invite anyone over. I told him I wasn't exactly a handyman, and he said that was fine. The house mostly took care of itself. I should have known then. You'll meet the owner once, then you'll be alone. He didn't mention the house was 3 stories tall, built in the early 1900s, with a roof that sloped like a widow's peak and windows that stared out like dark, watching eyes. It looked abandoned when I pulled up in my rusted-out Honda Civic, engine wheezing as it coughed its last breath at the end of the gravel driveway. Raymond was waiting on the porch, dressed too nice for someone living this far from civilization. Black suit, black tie, and a white dress shirt so starched, it looked like armor. His eyes didn't blink enough. This is a quiet job, he said, unlocking the front door with a heavy brass key. The owner values privacy above all else. Inside, the place smelled like old wood and mothballs. Every step echoed on the hardwood. There were clocks everywhere. Grandfather clocks, wall clocks, even a small silver one ticking on the mantel. But none of them showed the right time. The owner didn't show up that day, or the next. I moved into one of the upstairs guest rooms. It had a 4-poster bed, its frame carved with faces that always looked surprised. I told myself it was just old furniture, old wood creaks, old homes grown. That's what I kept repeating as I unpacked my duffel bag and tried not to notice how cold it was, even with the heater on. The first 3 nights were uneventful, quiet even. But on the 4th night, I woke up at 2:13 a.m. sharp. At least, that's what the antique pocket watch on my nightstand said. There was a noise downstairs, a faint dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. I sat up, holding my breath. I told myself it was probably a rat, maybe a raccoon, that found its way in. I grabbed the flashlight Raymond had left me and crept into the hallway. The floorboards didn't creak under my feet. That was the first thing that felt wrong. As I moved past the stairwell, I caught sight of something strange. One of the chairs in the dining room, a tall-backed antique with velvet cushions, was pulled halfway out from the table. I was certain I hadn't touched it. I would have remembered. I pushed it back in. The next morning it was out again. I started keeping a notebook. I logged everything. The time, what I heard, where I was. I wrote down what I saw, where each object was placed, the exact position of doors, windows, the fireplace poker. I wasn't imagining it. On the sixth night, the footsteps started. They always came from the attic, heavy, measured, one at a time. And they always stopped when I got to the bottom of the ladder. I climbed up once, just once. Nothing but boxes and dust. But when I came back down, the cellar door was open. I hadn't touched it. There were no phone signals out here. The landline was for emergencies only. Raymond hadn't answered a single text since he left. I told myself I was losing it. Cabin fever, loneliness. I tried to sleep more, eat better. I tried to ignore the growing feeling that the house was waiting for something. That changed on the eighth night. I woke up to the sound of humming, a low, melodic sound. A woman's voice, soft but tuneless. I followed it to the kitchen, heart pounding. There was a cup on the counter, still steaming, Earl Grey. I don't drink tea. That was the first time I locked my bedroom door. On the 10th night, I saw the man. I was brushing my teeth, leaning over the sink, when I looked up into the mirror and saw a figure behind me. Tall, pale, wearing the same black suit and white shirt as Raymond. But the face wasn't his. It was older, heavier. His lips curled into a smile too slow to be real. I spun around. Nothing. When I looked back in the mirror, the reflection was still there. But I was alone. I slept with the light on. By the 12th day, I stopped pretending this was a job. It was something else. Some kind of game. A test. I'd begun finding locks on doors that hadn't been there before. When I tried opening the pantry, it wouldn't budge. Same with the study. But at 3 a.m., I woke up to the sound of hinges creaking. The study was wide open. Inside, the desk drawers were full of Polaroids. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. All of different people. Men, women, teenagers. Some smiling, some terrified. In most of them, the background was the same. The very house I was standing in. In one photo, I recognized the four-poster bed. The person in it wasn't me. And the date on the back was from 1998. I locked the study and threw the key down the well behind the property. But that night, the key was back on my nightstand. Polished, waiting. I don't know who the owner is. I've never seen him, but I know he's watching me. I feel it, behind the mirrors, beneath the floorboards. Sometimes I catch glimpses of faces I don't recognize in the window reflections. Sometimes the faces are mine, but just slightly off. The clocks still don't match. But every night, at 3:03 a.m., they all chime in unison. And I swear something in the house moves when they do. I haven't decided yet if I'll try to run. I don't know if the roads even exist anymore. I don't know if I exist anymore, outside these walls. But I'll keep writing. I have to keep writing. Because I think that's the only thing that proves I'm still me. The following morning, I sat at the kitchen table, staring into a bowl of cereal that had long since gone soggy. I hadn't slept, not really. Just closed my eyes and drifted somewhere between waking and nightmare, unable to tell the difference anymore. The photographs haunted me, the teacup, the footsteps in the attic. The house wasn't haunted. I was sure of that. It was something worse. I needed answers. The study key was still on my nightstand when I woke. I left it there, refusing to acknowledge its silent invitation. Instead, I decided to explore the house methodically. There were still rooms I hadn't entered. Some were locked. Others just felt wrong, like the room at the end of the West Hall. It had no name on the door. Unlike the others, guest suite, library, drawing room. This one was just blank, and the knob was ice cold to the touch. I tried opening it my first week here, but it hadn't budged. Today, it clicked open like it had been waiting. Inside, the smell hit me first. Coppery, foul, like old meat left too long in the sun. The room was dark despite the two large windows, both covered in thick curtains. Dust coated the air, making each breath feel gritty. The walls were lined with bookshelves, but they were empty. At the center was a single reclining chair. Beside it, a small end table held a half-burned candle and a tape recorder. I approached the recorder slowly, heart thudding. My hand trembled as I pressed play. March 19th, day 52. The voice was male, strained, raspy like someone who'd spent hours screaming into a pillow. It changes the face, the body. Sometimes it's a woman, sometimes a child. I saw my brother once. He's been dead 6 years, but the voice is always wrong, like a bad dub in a foreign film. Static. I don't think it sleeps. I don't think it has to, but it watches. It waits for you to forget. And when you do, another burst of static. If you're hearing this, it hasn't taken you yet. You still have time. Don't trust what it shows you. Don't let it know you're afraid. The tape cut off there. I backed out of the room and slammed the door. The knob resisted for a second, as if something on the other side didn't want me to leave. I ran to the bathroom and vomited. That afternoon, I forced myself to walk the perimeter of the property. I needed air. I needed light, something real to hold on to. The forest pressed in from all sides, too dense, too quiet. Even the birds seemed to avoid it. Out back, I found something I hadn't noticed before. A shed, small, made of warped wood and rusted tin. It leaned to one side, like it was trying to collapse in on itself. The padlock was broken. Inside were rows of coats, dozens of them. Men's, women's. Some looked brand new. Others were moth-eaten. Beneath them, a pile of shoes. Sizes varied. Styles too. No dust. I turned around and walked straight back to the house, refusing to look over my shoulder. That night, I pushed a dresser in front of my bedroom door. I stayed awake with the flashlight in one hand and the pocket watch in the other. 2:12 a.m., 2:27 a.m., 2:59 a.m. At 3:03 the clocks chimed again. Only this time they didn't stop. The chiming went on and on, like a symphony of warped bells. Then footsteps, not above me this time, below, in the walls. I stood, heart hammering in my throat. Something scraped the floor outside my room. I whispered to myself, "You're just tired. You're not thinking clearly. It's an old house." Then came the knock. Not hard, just a soft tap, tap, tap on the door. I held my breath. "Andrew?" My mother's voice. She's been dead for 5 years. "Andrew, sweetie, open up. I'm cold." I didn't move. "Don't be scared. I just want to see you." I shoved my hands over my ears and squeezed my eyes shut. The voice continued, calm and pleading. Eventually it stopped. When I looked again, the pocket watch had stopped at 3:03. The next morning, everything was normal. No signs of movement, no more knocking. The clocks didn't chime, but the study door was wide open. Inside, the desk was cleared of Polaroids. Only one remained, face down. I picked it up. It was me, sleeping. The timestamp said last night. I'm done pretending this is a job. It's a trap, a performance. Something is watching me, studying me, testing what it can show me, what it can take from me before I break. But I'm not going to break. I've started locking every door, keeping a knife in my boot. I don't eat anything. I haven't opened myself. I haven't seen the thing yet. Not clearly. But I felt it, and I'm going to find it. I have to, because I think it already knows what I look like. And soon, it might not need me anymore. The storm rolled in without warning. Late afternoon sky turned slate gray, the kind of oppressive hue that makes it feel like the ceiling of the world is collapsing. I'd been in the basement, checking the fuse box after the lights flickered twice, when the first crack of thunder hit. It sounded too close, too low, like it had come from inside the house. When I climbed back upstairs, the living room windows were already rattling in their frames. Rain slammed against the glass like desperate hands. And then, the power went out. Total darkness. I stood there in the pitch black, heart pounding. The only sound the metronome of rain hammering the roof. I could hear my own breathing, too fast, too shallow. My flashlight sat on the kitchen counter. 8 feet away. I counted the steps. 1, 2, 3. A floorboard creaked behind me. I froze. I hadn't moved yet. Every instinct screamed not to turn around, but I did. Slowly, nothing. But when I got to the kitchen, the flashlight wasn't where I left it. Instead, it was sitting on the floor in front of the pantry, turned on, pointed inward. I stared at the beam of light aimed into the narrow, cracked open door. The pantry had always made me uneasy. Something about the air in there. It was too still, too stale. I reached down, picked up the flashlight, and shined it inside. The pantry was empty, but something had been dragged across the dusty floor. Long, shallow gouges. Not footprints, not animal prints. Just 2 thin lines leading deeper inside, where the wall should have been. Only now, there was an opening. I never noticed it before. A hidden passage carved into the back wall. It hadn't been there yesterday, or maybe I hadn't been looking closely enough. I swallowed hard, ducked inside, and followed the narrow tunnel. The air changed quickly, went from musty to rancid. Damp stone closed in around me. My shoulders brushed the sides. The flashlight flickered. At the end of the tunnel was a door, rust-covered, bolted from the outside, and something scratched from the inside. I didn't open it. I couldn't. I turned and bolted back down the tunnel, bursting into the kitchen like I'd just outrun a nightmare. The rain was louder now, but there was something else. Music, old jazz, something from a gramophone or a record player. It echoed faintly down the hall. It was coming from the library. I followed the sound, flashlight beam jittering across peeling wallpaper and water-stained ceilings. The library door was ajar. Inside, the fire was lit. I hadn't touched that fireplace since I arrived, and someone was sitting in the armchair, back to me. I couldn't breathe, couldn't move. "Andrew," the figure said. My name, spoken with slow familiarity. It stood and turned. It was me, or something, wearing me. The face was my face, but off. The eyes were too wide. The mouth was too still. It moved like a puppet being jerked by invisible strings. "What are you doing here?" it asked. Calm, measured. "I live here," I said before I could stop myself. The thing smiled. "No, you stay here. I live here." And then it began walking toward me. I backed out of the room and slammed the door shut. But there was no sound from the other side. No footsteps. No handle rattling. Just silence. When I opened it again 5 minutes later, the fire was out. The chair was empty. And the room smelled like ash. I've stopped sleeping. Not by choice. but because I can't trust what's real anymore. I've started catching myself in places I don't remember going. The hallway mirror showed me shaving this morning. Only I was still in bed. I found a note on the fridge in my own handwriting. It said, "No, you're not supposed to know yet." The pantry is locked now, with a new padlock I never bought. I'm being boxed in. The house is playing a game I don't understand, and I'm losing. But there's something else. A file cabinet in the basement, hidden behind a rotted panel in the wall. I found it while chasing another noise last night. Inside were manila folders, dozens of them, each labeled with a name, each with a photo attached. Caretakers, one every few years, going back to the 1960s. Every single one looked like me. Some older, some younger, some identical. It didn't make sense. None of it made sense. But one folder was empty, labeled in fresh ink, Andrew Bell, March 2025. I don't know what I am anymore. I don't know if this thing is copying me or replacing me or if I'm somehow becoming it. I just know I can't leave. I tried yesterday, packed my bag, got in the car, started the engine, and I woke up in bed. Like nothing happened, like the house had reset me, but not all of me. My hands were still dirty, covered in oil, and something darker under my nails. I don't think I was alone when I left. I think something followed me back in, or maybe something else left, and I'm what came back. The cameras in the house are still blinking, red dots in every corner, but they don't connect to anything I can find. I'm going to rip them all out tonight. I need to know who's watching, or what, because something in this house is pretending to be me. And I'm starting to forget which one of us is the imitation. Story 7. They chose me to die. Instead, I never thought I'd be the guy running from sirens in the middle of the night. I never thought I'd have my name on a police bulletin. But here I am, huddled behind a dumpster, behind an out-of-business laundromat in Kansas City, reeking of sweat and fear, watching my life unravel through the lens of a cracked burner phone screen. My name is Tyler Reed, and apparently I killed someone. At least that's what the cops think. But let me go back to when everything still made sense. It started 2 weeks ago. I was living a pretty average life, bartending 5 nights a week at a dive bar off 31st and Troost. It was a job, not a passion. I'd moved to Casey from Springfield a year earlier, trying to outrun some financial mistakes and a bad breakup. Clean slate kind of thing. My best friend Logan, who I'd known since middle school, had been living here for years. We were tight, always had been. He offered me a couch, then helped me get my own place, a few blocks from his. We drank together, played Xbox, helped each other move furniture when girlfriends left us or came back. You know, the usual. Logan worked freelance security gigs, private events, construction sites, rich folks who wanted a guy with muscles standing by the gate. He liked the work, said it gave him freedom. I never really questioned it. Then, 10 days ago, he called me up around 11 p.m., said he needed help moving something. No questions asked. I remember the hesitation in my gut. The way he said it. It's just a thing, Ty. I can't do it alone. Be quick. I should have said no, but it was Logan. I owed him more favors than I could count. So I said, yeah, where? He sent an address, an industrial lot near the edge of town. Somewhere I'd never been. I drove there in my old Civic, music off, windows down. The night air had that weird Midwest humidity, thick and still. Logan was already there when I pulled up. His truck's headlights were off. He waved me over, Said to park behind the warehouse so we wouldn't be seen from the street. "What are we moving?" I asked. He didn't answer, just popped the trunk of his truck. I wish I could erase what I saw. It was a body, a man, blood around the collar, pale, eyes open but unseeing. I backed away immediately. "What the hell, Logan? Who is that?" "Keep your voice down," he hissed. "It's not what it looks like." I turned to leave. I was ready to call the cops right then, but he grabbed my arm, tight. His eyes were wild. "He came at me. It was self-defense," he said. "He followed me after a shift, tried to rob me. I didn't know what else to do." "Then call the police, Logan." "I can't," he said. "There's more to it. Please, just help me move him. Then I'll explain everything." Stupid me. I froze, my brain trying to make sense of things too fast to land on the right answer. I helped him. We moved the body to a dumpster behind a shipping yard a mile away. I barely touched it, but enough. Gloves on, face turned away, heart pounding like a hammer. Logan tossed the guy's phone into a storm drain. Then we split up. I didn't sleep that night. I kept replaying the whole thing in my head, trying to convince myself it was just a bad dream, that Logan would tell the truth in the morning, and things would be fine. But he didn't call me the next day, or the day after. Instead, 3 days later, 2 detectives showed up at my apartment. They were polite at first, said they were investigating the death of a man named Victor Hale. Said my car had been seen in the area where the body was found. I lied. Badly. "I don't know anything," I said. "Wasn't me." They looked at each other. One of them, a tall guy named Date Ferris, opened a folder and slid it across my coffee table. A grainy photo. Me standing behind the dumpster. Logan's truck in the background. I felt the ground shift under me, like I'd stepped off the edge of something without realizing it. "We have security footage," the other one said. "You were there, and the victim's phone pinged a tower near your apartment a day before he died." I should have come clean. I should have told them about Logan, about the late-night call, about the self-defense story. But something didn't sit right. The more they talked, the more I realized they weren't even looking for a second suspect. They thought I did it, alone. That's when I ran. I grabbed my keys the moment they stepped outside to make a call. I didn't pack, didn't think. I just left. I've been moving ever since. Cheap motels, diners off the interstate, old friends who owe me more than they remember. I ditched my phone on day 2. Bought a burner in Tulsa. I keep checking the news. The story's everywhere now. Local bartender wanted for homicide. They've got my name, my photo, a completely false timeline of events. They say I had a motive, that I used to work at the same bar where Victor Hale bounced, that we'd argued before. I barely remember the guy. But Logan, he's nowhere in the reports. No mention, no questioning. It's like he doesn't exist in the narrative. Which means one thing. He planned this. All of it. The late night call. The place. The camera angle. The gloves he handed me. Hell, maybe even the murder itself. And I walked straight into it. I don't know where I'm going now. I've been journaling this in case something happens to me. If someone finds this, and I'm already in jail, or worse, maybe it'll help make sense of the madness. I have one goal left. Find Logan. Find him, make him talk, and prove what really happened. Because if I don't, the world's going to keep thinking I'm a killer. And maybe the scariest part? The more I stay on the run, the more I start to understand how people become the monsters the world paints them as, even when they didn't start that way. It's been 6 days since I disappeared. I've taken to counting by gas receipts and fast food wrappers now. Motel rooms blur together, cheap floral bedspreads, buzzing fluorescent lights, and the sour smell of old cigarettes baked into drywall. Each one feels like a half-formed memory, like déjà vu wearing a mask. I haven't slept properly since I ran. I close my eyes and I see Victor Hale's dead eyes staring up from that truck bed. Sometimes I hear Logan's voice, calm and calculated, whispering things I can't quite make out. Other times I see red and blue lights pulsing behind my eyelids, even when I'm alone in the dark. I don't know what's worse, being hunted by the cops, or realizing I never really knew my best friend. Last night, in a motel off I-4 near Lebanon, Missouri, I dreamed I was back in middle school. Logan and I were sitting on the swings behind Fairmont Elementary. The air smelled like wet mulch and the plastic tang of the slide. We were laughing about something, but the words were gone, just static. I looked over at him, and his face was wrong, stretched, twisted, like someone had tried to replicate him, from memory but failed. I woke up on the floor, drenched in sweat. I checked the news again this morning. My face is still on every outlet from St. Louis to Oklahoma. The article titles are all variations of the same horror. Tyler Reed, dangerous fugitive or calculated killer. There's a number to call if you see me. An email for anonymous tips. I wonder how many strangers have already turned me in, just for the hell of it, just for the reward money, just to feel like heroes. But they don't know what I know. Logan is still out there, and he's watching. Around noon, I drove into a diner outside Jefferson City. The sign said Annie's, the neon barely flickering. It was one of those places where the waitresses know everyone's name, and the coffee comes in chipped white mugs that might have been washed or might not have. I kept my head down. Baseball cap, hood up, sat near the back booth, facing the door. I needed a plan. Up until now, all I'd done was run. That's when I saw her, Melissa, one of Logan's old hookups. She used to crash at his place after long nights out. Dark hair, barbed wire tattoo on her arm. I remembered she worked out somewhere. Cybersecurity, maybe. She was sitting 2 booths ahead of me, alone, thumbing through a tablet while sipping on lemonade. Her car keys were on the table. Same stupid pink keychain I remembered from years ago. Glittery and shaped like a cat, flipping the middle finger. I waited until she asked for the check. Then I stood, heart pounding. Melissa? She looked up confused for a second. Then her eyes widened. Tyler? She whispered. Holy shit, what the hell are you doing here? I glanced around. Can we talk outside? Please. She hesitated. She probably should have screamed. Instead, she nodded and followed me out to the lot. Are you insane? She hissed once we were out of earshot. You're all over the news. They say you... I didn't do it, I said flatly. But Logan did. That shut her up. She looked around nervously, then leaned closer. What do you mean he did it? Logan? Are you out of your mind? I told her everything. The night at the warehouse, the body, the setup, the cops. The way Logan vanished from the story like a magician pulling the ultimate trick. Her expression changed as I spoke. Slowly, from disbelief to something more hollow. Fear, maybe. Tyler? I haven't heard from Logan in over a week, she said. But get this. Last Friday, someone tried to access my company's network using my credentials from a device registered to his name. I thought it was a glitch, but now, what does that mean? It means he's up to something bigger than just framing you. She looked at me like I was something fragile, like one wrong breath might shatter me. Maybe she was right. I need help, I said. I need to find him. I need proof. You're in IT. You said he logged in with your account. Can you trace it? She hesitated, chewing her lip. There's a cabin, she finally said. We went there once last year. Logan said it was his uncle's place, up near Osage Beach. Total dead zone. No cell service. He always said if he wanted to disappear, that's where he'd go. Something about that chilled me deeper than anything else had so far. I left that night. I didn't tell Melissa where I was going. Didn't want to drag her any deeper than she already was. But she gave me directions. Coordinates, actually. Said the cabin wouldn't show up on GPS. I got there just before dawn. The road was barely a road, more like gravel washed over a dried-up riverbed. The trees leaned close on either side, their branches clawing at the windows like they wanted to stop me from getting closer. The cabin appeared like a scar in the woods. Low, wide, sagging roof. One busted floodlight hanging by a wire. No other cars. No signs of life. I killed the engine and sat there for a full 5 minutes, listening. Silence. Then I stepped out. My shoes crunched against the dirt and dead leaves. I circled the place slowly, checking windows. Most were shuttered. One had a crack running across it like a spider web. The door was unlocked. Inside, it smelled like damp wood and mildew. Dust motes swirled in the slanting morning light. An old cot. A dusty table. A small monitor, blinking red from the corner. I walked over. It was connected to a motion sensor camera. Recently used. Recent footage. I hit play. The screen jumped. Static. Then Logan, carrying a box, dressed in dark clothes, talking to someone off-screen. We move in 3 days, he was saying. The decoy worked. He's running, just like we wanted. As long as he stays out of the way, the rest of this will go smooth. Then the feed cut out. I stood there, staring at the black screen, my own breath suddenly sounding too loud. The decoy worked. He wasn't just framing me for a murder. He was using me as a distraction for something worse. And I played my part perfectly. The screen stayed black for a long time after the video ended, but I kept staring. I was hoping, begging really, for it to flicker back on and show me something else. A clue, a timestamp, a face, something to make sense of what I'd just seen. But the monitor only stared back in silence. The decoy worked. I whispered the words out loud, and they made my stomach twist. He wasn't just framing me. I was a smokescreen for something else. The cabin was quiet again. My ears buzzed with that precious silence gives when you've gone too long without noise. I turned suddenly paranoid, half expecting Logan to be standing behind me, grinning, but the place was empty. Still, I didn't feel alone. I searched the rest of the cabin, one cautious step at a time. There was a half-empty bottle of water on the floor beside the cot, a dirty coffee mug on the windowsill, a couple of protein bar wrappers on the table. All recent. Someone had been here. Recently, maybe even yesterday. In the corner, there was a backpack. I opened it and found more wrappers. A map of Missouri with a few red circles and a prepaid phone. Turned off, no charger. I pocketed it anyway. Then, tucked inside the inner pouch of the bag, I found a photo. It was of me, not recent but not old either. Maybe taken a few months ago. I was walking out of the liquor store near my apartment, paper bag in hand, headphones in, candid, unaware. There were red marker circles around my face, notes in the margins. Predictable, alone. Works late Thursday sun. I felt like someone had scooped the air out of the room. I sat down hard on the cot, photo trembling in my fingers. He'd been watching me for longer than I thought. This wasn't just a plan to cover up a murder. It was a campaign. I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually I stood, walked outside, and forced myself to breathe. The sun had crested over the trees, but the light felt dull, filtered through layers of dread. A thought occurred to me then. If Logan's still nearby, maybe he left more behind. I scoured the area, walked 100 yards out in every direction, found tire tracks leading deeper into the woods. New, sharp treads in the soft mud. They pointed towards something bigger. I followed them for about half a mile, the forest closing in tight around me. The path widened eventually, opening into a clearing where I saw it. Another truck, not Logan's usual. This one was newer, cleaner, tinted windows, no plates. I ducked behind a tree and waited. No movement. The truck looked parked, not abandoned. There was a small structure nearby, less a cabin, more shed, made of aluminum panels and rusted bolts, half hidden beneath overgrowth, like it had been built to not be found. I crept toward it. Inside, I found more electronics. Monitors stacked too high, portable batteries, a laptop, hooked up to multiple USB sticks, all powered down. But more disturbing were the boxes, plastic bins, labeled with names. Some I recognized. Victor Hale, Melissa. And then there was a bin labeled Tyler Reed. Inside was a flash drive, a burner phone, and, God, another photo of me. This time in my apartment, shirtless, turning off a lamp. It wasn't a window shot. It was from inside. I stumbled back from the bin like it had bitten me. How long had he been in my apartment? How many nights had I come home, unaware someone had been there before me? I powered on the laptop. It took a while to boot. Password protected. I guessed once. Got it wrong. Then I tried again. Black Wolf. Logan's old Xbox username. Bingo. The desktop loaded up. Folders. Dozens of them. One named Operation Bait. I opened it. There were Word docs, call logs, phone recordings. It was a manifesto of manipulation. Each file laid out phases, targets, how to push people to their limits, to get them to act without thinking, to run, to spiral. And me? I was the centerpiece, the test case, the proof of concept. This wasn't personal. It was a blueprint. I wasn't just being framed. I was being studied. The air in the shed felt thick. I had the creeping feeling I'd stayed too long. I loaded the flash drive and the burner into my pocket and backed out of the shed, scanning the trees. Still quiet. Too quiet. I made my way back to the cabin as quickly as I could. Got into my car, locked the doors, and drove, tires throwing gravel behind me. I didn't stop until I hit a truck stop an hour away. Parked in the corner, far from the cameras, and booted the laptop again. There was one last file I hadn't noticed before. Titled Phase 2. Execute pending confirmation. I clicked. It was a plan. Bullet points, details, timeline, a bank, a target, an inside man, a scheduled explosion. And the date? 3 days from now. I sat there staring at it, heart racing. I realized something chilling then. Framing me for murder had been step one. The real crime The one he was orchestrating now was something else entirely. And if I didn't stop it, people were going to die. I thought about going to the cops. But why would they believe me now? Even with the flash drive, they'd just say I doctored it. That I was building an elaborate cover story. A paranoid narrative. Hell, Logan probably wanted me to go to the police so he could vanish while they wasted time chasing me again. So I made a decision. If the system wouldn't believe me, I'd take it down from the outside. I tossed the laptop into the back seat, pulled onto the highway. Next stop? St. Louis. And if Logan was planning what I thought he was, he wouldn't see me coming this time. Story 8. The Life I Stole. Who did it belong to? I was laid off on a Wednesday. No one ever tells you how quiet the world becomes when you lose your job. It's not just the emails or the meeting pings that go silent. It's something deeper. Like the silence you feel after a loved one stops breathing. The world doesn't stop, but everything inside you does. I sat in my one-bedroom apartment in Detroit, staring at the blank walls that once held ambitions. I'd torn down my vision board the week before. Funny how something meant to inspire you ends up mocking you once it all falls apart. That was the third job I'd lost in less than 2 years. I wasn't dumb. I had a business degree, decent resume, decent work ethic. But the economy didn't care. And neither did the corporations that were shedding people like snakeskin. Rent was due in 12 days. My car had 3 overdue notices. And I had 4018 in my checking account. I don't even know why I clicked on the spam-looking email. Subject line, your life could change today. Body, ever wish you could start over? Live better. We offer exclusive life exchange programs for qualified candidates. Click to apply. There was no company name, no signature, just a single link. And I clicked it. The application form was unnervingly short. Name, age, current income, level of satisfaction with life on a scale from 1 to 10. I hesitated at that last one and typed 2. There was one question at the end. Do you agree that once the exchange begins, it cannot be undone? No box to check, no fine print, just yes or no. I clicked yes. It was late. I was angry, tired, broke. Honestly, I didn't believe anything would come of it. But 2 hours later, my phone rang. The number was a 646 area code. New York. I answered, and a voice on the other end, flat, almost robotic, said, "You've been selected." The next day, a man showed up at my door. He didn't look corporate. He looked like someone you'd ignore in an airport. Gray jacket, wrinkled khakis, a face you'd forget 2 seconds after you saw it. He didn't introduce himself. He just said, "Bring only what you can carry." I didn't ask where we were going. I just grabbed my backpack, slid my phone and charger inside, and followed him. We walked past my broken-down car, past the street where last week a guy had pulled a knife on another guy over a pack of smokes, past the boarded-up laundromat and the liquor store with bars on the windows. For the first time in a long time, I felt something like hope. We drove 6 hours, never spoke. He didn't play music. I didn't ask questions. Eventually, we pulled off a remote exit, took 2 left turns, and entered what looked like a gated private community. Except there were no signs, no guard booths, just a thick metal gate that opened with a keypad. Inside was a world I didn't belong to. Lush green lawns, trees trimmed to perfect roundness. Homes that looked like they came out of an architecture magazine. We pulled up to a modern house. White stone, black glass, too clean, Too quiet. He handed me a key. "This is yours now. Everything you need is inside." I stared at him. What do I owe? What do I have to do? He looked directly at me for the first time since we met. "You'll be informed soon." Then he left. The house smelled like money. Marble floors, smart screens on the walls, fridge fully stocked, closets filled with clothes in my size. Everything was tailored to me. There was even a desk in the office with my name engraved on a brass plate. Kyle Monroe, Client Experience Specialist. I had never held that title before. I hadn't applied for it. There was a brand new MacBook on the desk, already logged in. An email was open. "Welcome to your new life. Do not contact anyone from your past. Do not leave the estate without authorization. A car will arrive tomorrow. Be ready." The car arrived at 9 a.m. sharp. Another nondescript man was behind the wheel. No greeting, no smile. Just morning. We drove for an hour to a downtown high-rise with mirrored glass walls and a lobby that smelled like citrus and sanitizer. Inside, I was greeted by a woman with a tight bun and red nails. She led me to a large office. Leather chairs, views of the skyline. A man in a charcoal suit sat across from me. He looked like someone who drank scotch before 5 p.m. He didn't offer his name. Just asked, "How are you adjusting?" I said I didn't understand what the job was. He smiled like I'd told a charming joke. "You won't be doing much. This is all about alignment. You were given a better life. All we ask in return is obedience." Then he slid a document across the table. It had a list of names, faces, occupations. These people are part of the exchange. You'll meet them, guide them, sometimes assist with transitions. "Transitions?" I asked. He looked me dead in the eye. "You'll know when it happens." The first person I met was a woman named Bethany. She was assigned to me for orientation, a term I later realized was code for something else. She used to be a hospice nurse. Quiet, kind, smiled a lot. We sat in a cafe that overlooked a fake lake with swan boats drifting across it. She asked, "Do you feel guilty yet?" I blinked. "About what?" She sipped her tea. "Most people do. Eventually." When I didn't reply, she added, "Someone had to lose their life for you to gain this one. You just haven't seen it yet." I didn't sleep that night. The house felt too big, too silent, like it was waiting. I woke up around 3 a.m. to the sound of something being slid under the front door. It was an envelope, no return address. Inside was a photo. A man, mid-40s, wearing the same coat I used to own, standing in front of my old apartment. Written on the back, in pen. He was in the way. No signature, no explanation. Just that. And suddenly the air felt thinner, like I'd inhaled someone else's breath. I sat on the cold kitchen floor for hours, staring at that photo, wondering what they meant. I didn't know his name, but he was wearing my old coat. And then the dream started. Not supernatural dreams. No demons, no ghosts, just flashes. A car crash, a woman screaming. My hand stained with something dark. Not blood, oil, ink. I couldn't tell what was real anymore. I didn't ask for this life, but I'd agreed to it. And whatever I had exchanged, it was starting to reveal itself, bit by bit. And something told me I was next. The man in the photo haunted me. Not in a supernatural way. Not like a ghost flickering at the edge of my vision. It was worse than that. It was knowing he was real, knowing he had existed, and knowing somehow I had replaced him. The back of the photo, the words, "He was in the way." I didn't know who wrote that. I didn't know if the man in the picture was dead. But I stopped using the front door after that night. The next morning, I found a note taped to the fridge. Report to level 17, Tower B noon, use side elevator. There was no signature, no official seal, just that. I'd never been to Tower B. I didn't even know there was a level 17. The last time I'd gone to a building with no signage, no lobby, no real people, well, that was the day I stopped being Kyle Monroe from Detroit. I didn't want to go, but I didn't feel like I had a choice. Tower B looked abandoned. The parking lot was cracked, overgrown with weeds. One light flickered overhead, like it had been trying to die for a decade. I found the side elevator behind a steel door with chipped paint and no handle on the outside. It opened the moment I stepped close, like it had been expecting me. Inside, the floor buttons had no numbers, just a metal dial, like a safe. I turned it carefully until it clicked 17 times. The door was shut, and then the elevator plunged. Not down, up, faster than I've ever moved in a building that didn't creak. My stomach pressed against my spine. My ears popped. Then, abruptly, it stopped. When the doors opened, I didn't step out right away. The floor in front of me was covered in a thick, soft gray carpet, and the hallway ahead had no windows. Just a row of black doors. A man was waiting. Thin, bald, wearing gloves. "You're late," he said flatly. I checked my phone. It was 11:57. He turned and started walking without another word, and I followed. Room 1712 was not what I expected. No computers, no glass desks, no monitors. Just a dim room with a long wooden table and a projector playing silent black and white footage on the far wall. The video showed a playground, swings swaying, no children, then a cut. A man at a gas station, another cut. Someone walking through a dark alley. Then, a still frame of a house. My old apartment, the same stoop, same cracked steps. The man with gloves clicked the projector off. "You're here because we need your compliance." I sat there, hands in my lap, the taste of rust in my mouth. "You were given a better life. In return, you must facilitate the transitions of others." I nodded slowly, like I understood. But I didn't. Not really. He walked over to a cabinet, pulled out a thick folder, and slid it across the table. Inside were photos. Dozens, maybe hundreds. Faces, names, birth dates, medical records. The first page, name, James W. Harlan. Age 43. Occupation janitor. Status, marked for exchange. I looked up at the man. "What do you mean marked?" He didn't answer. Just handed me a phone. A burner model, old and clunky. "You'll receive instructions. Do not keep the phone on you at all times. Leave it in the glove box of your vehicle. We'll be watching." I opened my mouth to speak, but he was already gone. The first time I followed someone, I told myself it wasn't stalking. It was data collection, a job, a test. James Harlan lived 20 minutes away in a rundown house on a dead-end street. His truck was old. Rust ate away at the rear bumper. He limped when he walked. I watched him for 3 days. He worked nights, came home around 4 a.m., microwave dinners, lived alone. On the 4th day, I received a message on the burner phone. "You have observed. Now choose." Below the message were 2 options. Proceed, refuse. I stared at the screen for a long time. My fingers hovered over refuse. But the moment I pressed it, a new message popped up. "Refusal requires replacement. Please confirm." My heart stopped. Replacement? Me? I pressed cancel and the screen went dark. The next day, I watched James again. And that night, I sent the message they wanted. Proceed. What followed wasn't an execution. Not exactly. I didn't kill him, but I made the call. I was given an address, a warehouse on the edge of town, empty except for a folding chair in the center and a metal cabinet against the wall. My instructions were simple. Escort him. I told James he'd won a prize. Some lottery he'd forgotten entering. Free gas for a year, I said. Companies filming testimonials for marketing. Just show up. 1 hour of your time. He was skeptical, but the promise of gas and $100 cash was enough. I drove him there. He sat in the chair. 2 men entered 5 minutes later. I was told to leave, so I did. I don't know what happened to him, but the next day, his file was stamped, exchanged. I couldn't sleep that night. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps. The walls felt closer, the bed too soft, the sheets too warm. I opened the fridge for water and found another envelope tucked behind a bottle of almond milk. Inside was a key and a single slip of paper. You've earned an upgrade. The next house was bigger. 3 stories, private gate, sauna, wine cellar, guest rooms I'd never use. They even upgraded the clothes again. Tailored, custom fitted. My new name was now listed on the utilities. Kyle R. Monroe, Executive Liaison. I didn't remember agreeing to that either, but I stopped asking questions. Bethany visited again 2 days later. She wore sunglasses, even though it was cloudy. We sat on the patio and watched the sprinklers rise and fall over perfectly green grass. How many? I asked her quietly. She didn't answer right away. Then, I facilitated 11. I felt sick. How do you live with it? She smiled, tired. You stop thinking of them as people. You start thinking of them as openings, gaps to be filled. We didn't make the rules. We just chose survival. I stared at her for a long time. Have you ever wanted to go back? She shook her head slowly. There's no back, only down. And then she left. That night I dreamed of James Harlan. He was standing in front of my old apartment, wearing my jacket again. Only this time, his face was wrong, blurred, like a photo that had been smudged in the rain. And I swear, I could hear him whisper, "This life was never yours." I woke up choking on my own breath. And for the first time, I wondered, what if he was right? The key from the envelope opened a door I didn't know existed. I found it behind a false panel in the master bedroom closet. Seamless at first glance, but if you pressed just right, the wood clicked loose. Behind it, a narrow staircase spiraled down into complete blackness. No light switch, no railing. I stood at the top for nearly 10 minutes, just staring into that descending dark. Something about it felt final. Like once I took the first step, something in me would change for good. But curiosity is a hunger, and it eats away at hesitation. I went down. The air grew colder with each step. When I reached the bottom, I was standing in a small concrete chamber, bare, except for a table and a chair. The walls were smooth, sterile, soundless. There were no lights, but the ceiling glowed faintly with that same dull, featureless light they use in morgues. On the table was another envelope. Inside, a single photograph. A child, maybe 8 or 9, freckles, big ears, wearing a hoodie with a cartoon dinosaur. Written in red marker across the bottom. Exchange pending. I froze. I had never seen a kid listed in the files before. Everyone I'd tracked had been an adult, mostly lonely, broke, invisible. People like I used to be, Not this. This was something else. This was wrong. I turned the photo over. On the back, it said, "She has to agree." The next day, the burner phone buzzed. A new file had been uploaded. Name, Angela Cartwright. Age, 34. Mother of Emmett Cartwright, the boy from the photo. Single mom, works 2 jobs, lives in a rough part of Toledo. There was no explanation of the exchange. No details on who would replace him or what "she has to agree" really meant. Just an address, a task. I was being asked to convince a mother to give up her son. The first time I saw Angela, she was dragging a sack of laundry behind her and holding Emmett's hand in the other. Her car was older than any I'd seen in months. Its paint oxidized to a dull rust orange. They didn't look like targets. They looked like survivors. I followed them for 3 days. Never close. Just enough to understand. He was a quiet kid, always holding her hand. She talked to him constantly, encouraging him, reminding him to look both ways, to zip his coat, to be kind. She wasn't a neglectful mother. She wasn't desperate or broken. She loved him. On the 4th day, I broke the rules. I approached her outside a corner market, holding a clipboard and pretending to be a surveyor. "Do you have a few minutes?" I asked. She looked tired. Her eyes had that hollow, working mother glaze. But she smiled anyway. "If it gets me out of bagging groceries for 2 minutes, sure." I led her to a bench just outside. I didn't ask her about groceries or coupons or any of the fake survey questions. I just said, "If someone offered you everything you've ever wanted, financial security, a house, freedom, what would you give up?" She blinked, hesitated, then, "Why?" I shrugged. "Just curious." She looked at me differently then, a little sharper. Like she'd realized the conversation was wrong, but didn't know why. "Nothing is free," she said finally. "People don't offer things like that without strings." "What if the price was someone else?" She stiffened. "What do you mean?" "A stranger," I said quickly. "Someone you'd never meet. Just gone. You wouldn't even know their name." Angela stood up slowly, her voice quieter now. "I've had people offer me things before. Men, strangers, employers. Always something nice in exchange for something ugly. You get good at saying no." She looked me dead in the eyes. "And I wouldn't trade my son for the world." That night I dreamed of Emmett. But it wasn't a dream. I woke up in the chair in the concrete room again, though I had no memory of walking down the stairs. The photograph of Emmett was still on the table. Only now, it had changed. He was lying on a bed, in a hospital gown, pale and hooked up to wires. Eyes closed. A red bracelet around his wrist. In the corner of the image, someone was standing just out of frame. I couldn't see their face, but I knew they were watching me. The next morning, I drove to Toledo again, but Angela and Emmett were gone. Their apartment was emptied, a fresh lock on the door, no forwarding address. No one remembered seeing them move. I tried to call the number listed in the file. It was disconnected. I messaged Bethany. She responded within minutes. "The exchange proceeded without you." I stared at the words, reading them over and over. Without me? Then why the dream? Why the photo? Why the stairs? I didn't leave the house for 3 days after that. I kept waiting for a knock, a phone call, a punishment, but nothing came. The silence felt worse. I paced the halls at night, checked the closets, stared at the mirror, wondering if the person staring back was still me. And then, one night, I found the second panel. This one, was in the bathroom, behind the mirror. It led to another stairwell. Narrow, cramped, metal this time. I didn't even hesitate. This time the chamber was different. A long hallway. Fluorescent lights, dozens of doors, all identical. Grey steel, no windows. I walked past them slowly, counting. At door number 9, I heard breathing. I pressed my ear against the metal. Shallow, panicked breaths, the sound of something tapping. I knocked once. The breathing stopped. Then a voice, faint and cracked. "Are you the new one?" I didn't respond. The voice came again, louder. "Tell me, do you regret it yet?" I backed away, heart pounding. My fingers were cold. The hallway suddenly felt tighter. From another door, number 13, I heard laughter. Not loud, not manic. Soft, controlled, amused. Like someone who'd been waiting a long time for company. When I finally returned upstairs, the burner phone buzzed. One new message. "Next task ready. Confirm when willing." I stared at the screen, and for the first time, I didn't feel afraid. I felt numb. The people they showed me weren't random. That much I knew now. They weren't just picking names from a database. They were orchestrating something. I had crossed a line. Multiple, maybe. And I wasn't sure there was a version of me left that could still come back. I locked the phone in a drawer, but deep down, I knew I'd open it again. Because once you live someone else's life long enough, you forget how to live your own.